Okay, so then if we do this,
Whenever you see things.
Yeah, well, I mean,
You have to make hard decisions.
I was thinking doing that after the auction.
Yes, let's. That wasn't anything. Well, you could have, at least a step problem.
Maybe that's what it is.
That was the point.
No, that's
Just
right.
basically.
Says everybody.
Yes.
They all share a private drive. So I just.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, I'm sorry, I'm ready. I mean, I need to talk to Jesse about it, talk about
So far, so. And then I always. It's got additional amenities allowing it.
No, yeah, they didn't find your city, that's very.
The intent of the highway zone. That was the intent. The nice structure. So it's not even C2 that you get.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if it's there. If you want and run around.
So this one, actually, I want to show this because it doesn't have a paragraph on it. I thought they were supposed to have.
It is in the highway.
Yeah, see that.
You can follow the gas station right in the middle of that.
Yeah, we've been working on that before. I thought they had to have this paragraph on it. No.
If you want, that's what you do.
This one.
Don't come and ask. That's my case.
So it's right. That's it.
R12 and R8.
And then
There's a little R8 on the side.
That's good.
Yeah.
You know when you're ready. Why is the developer in there?
You just want to make it run well.
No.
You could sell those. Very low.
We're good to go? Yep, we're good. We can start.
You ready?
Yep. Let's get started.
So item 1. Tonight is vacating Thomasville Plat B, and approving Thomasville Plat C, which is a simple adding on to one of the lots. through easement. So this is the existing plat. There's 4 lots on this subdivision. We're simply just adding a drainage easement on lot number 2. See there's an irrigation coming down. The other lots, 2 and 3 I believe, or 3 and 4, have access to maintain that ditch as it comes through or drain on the property. So it really is just a minor adding that easement onto lot 2.
And that's because there's a canal there, that's the reason.
There's a ditch.
There's a ditch there. So it's not required, or is it?
No, just to allow the other property owners to
Allow them relief if there's a problem with water.
So it just allows lots 3 and 4 to get on and do maintenance or anything if they need to. Yes, it's lot number 2's property, but it gives them the access rights to come on and maintain. Along with lot.
How often does that happen?
I don't know. I imagine it's just the ability to clean out or do whatever they need to do.
Yeah, it's just if you're not maintaining the ditches, then they have the right to go on the property and maintain them. We used to do it all the time when we got irrigation, we'd go down the ditches, pull weeds and pull out growing saplings so they wouldn't interfere with the water.
Any questions on that one?
We like the simple ones.
Yeah.
If we only had more than that.
Exactly.
The next one is fairly simple, which is the State Street Commons, which we've talked about multiple times. This is the one where we have the 3 lots up front. Came through about a month and a half or so ago. The council ended up rezoning the back, or leaving the back part. We cleaned up this line here. So this is C3, this is C2. They're now creating these 3 lots. This one was created about a month or so ago. And then the larger lot was left on the plan. You see the big area of lot number 2. That's what's the question today. They are simply taking that, dividing it into 3 lots. The back half would be the 1 lot that we talked about for the women's and children's crisis. The other 2, there was a detention basin that comes along here. It ended up being lot number 202, and then taking that and maintain, or being on their property. However they work to make this is up to them. That's gonna be called. They wanted to have a separate piece. We told them it had to be a part of one of the lots. So 202 is that. 201 is this one, so the develop these in commercial, that's already in process, and then that one will wait for that one to come in.
Is there easements for the roads?
So easement comes up to here. And then when this project comes in our house, this will need to connect somewhere up here, and there's an access. So have to connect here, and hand it to their property will be something to work with.
Okay, because I thought the access from the lot that's not on there is through lot 201 and 202. Is that correct? Or are they turning in and out on State Street? The access to the lot that's already been segmented off, I thought the access to that lot was through lot 201 and 202.
Yeah,
Yes, so they're.
I just want to make sure the easements are there.
Is there a note on the plat, do you know, Cheryl?
But it has some access on State Street.
I thought it said
Actually, it
that
doesn't go through.
it wasn't supposed to.
That's not.
There's easements at the bottom, but I can't read it from here.
That means
Shared access, something. Easement. It's a valid question.
It is about. But that'd be a little more clear, we'll have to verify that.
Okay.
every question's valid, it's just whether they're stupid or not.
Fair point.
There's no stupid question.
Yeah,
And of
there are.
course, right now it's vacant, so that they're in the process. Just now, probably a good time to talk about 3.3, which
Former 3.3.
Former 3.3, which was the former Meadow Gold property, that's been withdrawn, it's gonna be renoticed for November 15th. November 15th, to be heard by the planning commission. So just so you know, there'll be some probably people that come, I actually sent out notices to all the residents, 10,000 people. Suspect we'll get some people out, we have not received a lot of phone calls, to my knowledge, Cheryl, I don't know if we've received any other
There
than.
was an income at all for that.
We had one gentleman today that I know of called, just made sure it was off the agenda, so. It will be considered, it's just not gonna be tonight, it'll be on the 15th. And then the city council will consider it in December. Any questions on that? Now to the simple item, 3.3 and 3.4. There's a couple issues with it, not issues, a couple of requests with this project. One is to amend the general plan street connection map. The Lakeview area street connection map is what it's actually called. This is the property in question, you see outlined in red. It's owned by JLT at this stage. She's proposing to develop it into HS zone, highway services zone, with the development agreement to limit what it can do on the property. But the first step would be to amend the street connection master plan, which you see the red circles indicate that these streets eventually will be connected, whether that's here to here, or that's here to here, or somehow on the plan itself, it doesn't direct where it needs to be connected, it just needs to be connected.
Does he have an opinion of where he would like it connected?
Who?
He's
The
asking
owner?
He wants to eliminate it,
eliminate it.
so
So
that
he doesn't want it connected at all.
doesn't want to connect to it. So his application tonight is to eliminate all four of these circles so that none of those would be connected in the future. That's where we're getting a lot of emails you're seeing from a lot of neighbors. Probably here as well, we have a line on that, this way, so we get some access here. Right now, the dead end here, these are kind of unfaultable because we only allow 600 foot crosswalks.
So are those the landlocked ones people have referred to?
Yes.
The ones that would be landlocked if that wasn't.
they're also the backs of those lots, Jason, to the right of the yellow. If they were to subdivide off their back halves, they can.
So these are 30 feet, the original plan was sold by the city, come down. Like that's one option, to come down and connect here, that would then be the loop.
How steep is that?
I was gonna say, that's at the top of the hill, right?
It's at the top of it.
The ones at the top, the others at the bottom, or they're both up on?
Bottom, that would be top
This is
spot.
bottom. This comes around kind of at the same level, this started to slow down a bit around here. It's fairly flat to the.
How long has the city owned that? And what's the intent the city has for that
Many
property?
years, the intent is to eventually put it into a park, but that's a long term. It's on our parks master plan.
That's good. So it really has just sat there for some time.
It's out there. There was probably, Ryan, about 15 years ago, there was some interest in developing that as a park.
It looks like it's an awkward place to put a park, it's steep.
It was
Yes.
probably left over from the widening, I think they milled some sand in that for I-15 or something. UDOT had it at the time, paid the city, so there are some reversionary issues with if the city wants to sell it or give it to somebody else, they would have to pay then UDOT for that. So the city's maintained it just as an open area at this point. There's no plans that I'm aware of, other than in the Parks Master Plan, to eventually develop it.
How much ground is it that the city owns?
It's several acres, I'm not sure.
And I'm sorry, maybe I missed it. But the city owns property and then the petitioner owns separate property that aligns to it?
Right, so the yellow is the city property.
Yes.
If you go back and outline the red, okay, so you can see the yellow piece is right.
On that one, the
Oh,
PF
got
right
it.
next to the line,
Yes,
that's the
that's
city's
the
So
property.
he's not including the city's property in this proposal, but it is adjacent to it.
Why is he eliminating the one connection where he doesn't own the property?
That I'm not positive why he's doing that.
He doesn't have property there, so
It really doesn't affect him. I know one time he had interest in buying the city's property, we informed him it's probably not of interest of the city to sell it to him. So I'm not positive why, other than he lives in the great area. So he may just want to exclude the ability for that street to be.
And that, this is gonna be does that connect to 16 north? I mean, does that connect 16 south, sorry, 16 south all the way across?
So 16 is here.
Was the intent ever to connect back down to that stub of,
So about 15.
30 years ago.
Was it 30?
It's before I came here,
The city actually owned this property.
Was that before you were born? No.
Actually, it's
almost. Actually, the year that Orem got that property was close to when I was born.
Okay.
I just looked it up, so.
So the city at one time had the property, had the street right of way, had the alignment, and actually were going to connect this. There was a significant opposition, and the city ultimately ended up selling it back to the property owner. Just backing off. and not-
The opposition was just because of traffic concerns.
They just didn't want this.
30 years ago.
They didn't want to be connected.
30 years ago, it wasn't that crowded.
The one on the top didn't want to be connected to the one on the bottom.
either way?
They just didn't want this connected, so in the meantime, this was then developed.
That's about when it started.
Now, traffic also ends up getting a connection now.
40 years.
So anyway, the application before you write this item specifically is to vacate or eliminate those connections in the Lakeview area, which is on State Street.
Can he do an application on stuff that's not on his property? That's one of my questions.
He can propose to amend the general plan,
Okay, even though it's not on his property.
and that's up to the planning commission to make a recommendation, city council to ultimately say yes or no, we want to keep them, or yes, we may want to. Here, the Bachholm issue came, that was an issue, because these two were required to be connected. So right now, any development that comes in this area is gonna have to address how that's gonna be connected. So unless those are either eliminated, or if they're saying, no, they need to be there, then whatever comes in would have to address how they're gonna connect.
Are there two separate applications or one? Could we say yes to the one and no to the other? Can we
You can make a
split it?
recommendation on, the direction.
But now, all those letters we've received, aren't they opposed to both what he wants to do and connecting the streets? That's what I,
There's
that's
two
what I was
different, I
getting.
think two different issues. One is the street connection, which is the one item. And the other item is their site plan, which we'll get into here in just a minute, which is pretty intense as far as what he wants to put on the property. So I think there's a combination of people against either or both. So it just depends on.
Yeah, there were a couple others complaining that their lots would be isolated and landlocked and they couldn't get to them if we were to remove these access ways.
The other, we'll get into the site plan. This is where he's focusing a lot of his commercial. It's the only access to be more, so that's where a lot of the complaints, a lot of the issues are coming. It's gonna be busy, and it's got about 550 parking stalls for the 2-level underground parking structure. So there's gonna be a lot of access on that street, and that's the only road that he's proposing, so that's.
So he doesn't want to take it through the neighborhood, he wants to take it through the more commercial side.
Yes, so there's a town community right there.
You got townhomes here, you got townhomes here, you got townhomes here,
Apartments.
so- and then you
And
got.
that road's only 2 lanes.
Gateway.
Yeah,
It's a
Yeah,
narrow
it's only
road.
2 lanes.
Commercials. There, right?
it's far. Commercial's far.
So do you want us to go to the site plan?
Yeah.
Show them?
It might help to understand this issue with that issue because they're kind of, the space is interconnected.
I mean, just a couple of points that we're, obviously, we don't really want to create landlocked properties, we want to have interconnection, we want to have the ability for public services to be able to access without doing the loops. So there are some issues that we foresee with some of those connections. So this is the proposed concept plan that he's wanting. This is a 81,000 square feet multi-purpose event and fitness center. You can see there's a pool, there's an outdoor swing, pickleball type courts. There's 12,000 square feet of 2-story retail space, restaurant with a reception center there as well. And then if you can see the parking structure is under the whole, this level, which is level 2, and then it goes down to level 3. Kind of circulates down in there. The only access that you see is right up. So there's only one access to this, all of this development that we ran out to 15. Then he's got 42 Airbnbs that are actually 2 units per building, so there's 84. So each of these represent 2 units. Then he's got an emergency crash gate here, fire, emergency crash gate here as well. And then so the main access would be out to, and I think that's part of the issue that some of the neighbors have, especially those who are living here or living up in there, they don't want all that access to directly out, just one access. That's kind of the main issue. This is what I gathered from a lot of.
So I have two quick questions while we're on this. So the intent is for them to be Airbnbs as opposed to part of a short-term rental that's done through the event center kind of thing?
The intent would be to be separate, right?
So every single one of those units would be an Airbnb. Okay, and the second one is how for fire and safety can you have that many people coming in and out through one entrance?
That's a good question.
Rezone, not a site.
Right, but there's a lot tied together, right?
So the only,
So-
I think thing that fire maybe.
Doesn't matter if it's in order to, that question does.
The fire maybe today, but it's just an emergency crash gate, but as far as engineering, just the planning staff, I don't, it's a lot to put on one axis. So that's why it's doing this.
It's not my imagination, that's a lot for one access.
And if you look at the heat, the throat, if you got a lot of people coming out, let's say the event ends, which every way to get out, you've got a 1 or 2 across that.
Well, and then how much is gonna stack trying to get onto Sand Hill and
So I mean, that's our concern, it's not necessarily VHS necessarily, but it's pretty intense the way it's proposing to do. Now, he is proposing to do a development agreement with time to what you see here, so those 3 uses, other than, different resident or retail or residential or restaurants, those are obviously allowed to have a restaurant. But those uses would be limited to restaurant, retail, and or reception center, multi-purpose, so it'd be tied to the development.
so the HS is so that we can have motel type accommodations on the ground, like why is HS needed?
So HS is the only zone that we would have that would allow him to do the Airbnb type.
Oh, how the convention center part.
And the convention
The
center,
convention center.
so anything commercial, because this is.
Because they could put in
residential.
houses and call them Airbnbs.
Yeah.
So they kind of, originally when we talked to the gentleman, this is what he wanted to do, it's kind of more. Well, he didn't want this as well, because his wife's big into the field hockey. So they want that by tournaments. It's kind of roughly this additional stuff there. But our concern really ultimately boils down to one access. Does it really make sense to put heavier, a lot more commercial? I mean, it is commercial, it is all commercial, it is multifamily.
It's tapering out of the commercial, but it's how you get back there.
Yeah,
These types used to be quite honest, they probably belong more on State Street or University Parkway where it's intended to have that business use, not a residential.
Right.
niche.
Yeah.
There is a top part, but it looks great in the top part, just doesn't look good in the bottom part.
So we didn't really come out with a recommendation, but
okay.
it's more neutral.
Jason, is there a need to have that many Airbnbs in Orem, Utah?
Well, we have many.
Do we?
already.
We have no regulations.
We don't currently, because we're in the process of looking at that area, I think it's looking at some regulations along with Jake Summers, the director, so they're looking at that, and whether they want to limit it, so it could, whatever that happens, could potentially happen. We don't have those that are like 82 or 84 in one, like they're spread out throughout the residential zones. We have that many in one, but they're not all congregated.
That is why the true Airbnb, the way it's set up is more of a, I don't know, hotel.
It's I call it a horizontal motel with 84 rooms.
Yeah.
But they're obviously suites, right? They've got probably kitchens.
I'm thinking like the homestead, it's more like the homestead.
Yeah.
How many Airbnbs do we have licensed or?
We don't license them currently, I don't know how many we have in the city.
We're not allowed to look on the
Yeah,
website.
state law.
By state law.
Really?
We can look.
We can look.
You guys
You
can.
look,
We
but
can.
they just have
Let
one
me
now.
know.
You guys
Zone.
can
All you want.
Zone for these, right? How many are zone? You can look at your own
No,
thing.
that sounds like corruption.
Well, all the residential zones will allow Airbnb.
Or it's private property rights, either way, right?
So you don't have an ordinance limiting short-term rentals right now. So someone can have a residential property and rent it out for a year, 10 years, or a night. And so state law prohibits us from enforcing on short-term rentals based on merely an advertisement on or a VRBO or a site like that.
Just on Airbnb, we have over 1,000. They stopped counting at 1,000.
You know,
In
You know,
Orem.
You know, in the entire city of Orem, just in Airbnb, and then with the VRBO, sometimes they post on both.
Yeah.
I had a couple in Vegas and the city shut it down with every single one.
Were you the one my wife rented and the code enforcement showed up?
No, they said in order for you to be an Airbnb, you have to abide to all the rules hotels abide by, which
You
means.
shouldn't.
Absolutely, but what that made it expensive. By the time we have to do everything he asks us to do. However, we still sold the homes for handsome payout. It's not like, it is not the end of the world. It still works, you take your money from one city, put it in another.
Hospitality taxes are.
Again, and you have to add all the hospitality taxes to the Airbnb. Because the Las Vegas was losing a lot of revenue for that. I mean, it is revenue. If they want to do the same business as a hotel, they should produce the same revenue.
Jason, I think this would be an excellent topic for us to have on, for future meeting and like our pre-meeting here, to have a discussion about short-term rentals, because this is not an issue that's gonna be going away.
Have there been complaints issued regarding the short-term rentals?
Oh, absolutely.
Lots of complaints, and what,
It depends on there's some that have really large homes that are renting out to not just the family, but bus full of people, and sports teams, and so we're getting 20, 30, 40 people coming into the neighborhood off of a bus and then just making a lot of noise. It's
Starts
just,
getting stuck in the neighborhood because it's not built for the traffic.
right, so there is some issues with those that are not really following what they typically probably should as a residential, one family or.
Yeah.
So that's the issue we're seeing right now, and Gary is working on the words, once it gets ready, we could probably bring it and discuss it as before it goes to city council.
Is there a way to split what counts as an event center from what counts as a hotel and what is an Airbnb? Because I mean, there's a difference between having a house in which, you know, max occupancy is 48 people, they're there once in a while, and having a property in which, like this, where you have 84 separate units with 2 people in each unit, I mean, you can do the math, like those are different scales. Is there any way of
Yes,
bifurcating those?
there's lots of approaches that communities take, and they range from registering and being licensed and paying fees and taxes similar to like maybe a hotel would, to what zones you put them into. In single family zones, you can't rent your property for less than 30 days.
Yeah.
So a rental of less than 30 days is some sort of transitory rental, and so no short-term rentals allowed in single-family neighborhoods or residential neighborhoods. So there's a variety of approaches that communities can take, and about every approach you've seen, they've taken them. They range from what Santa Monica's doing. Santa Monica has some pretty aggressive regulation, to uber aggressive regulation, what New York City just did. I don't know if you've been looking at that, and there's a great article on it in Wired magazine.
What did they do? No, by doing that, they were able to make homes semi-affordable again. Where people in New York can actually afford buying. Airbnb was one of the biggest factor of increased home prices, because the revenue comes in 1 month is normally 5 to 8 times what a mortgage payment would be. So it makes sense to overpay and outbid every other single family homeowner to buy the property, and it has single-handedly increased the prices of homes across the country. It's a great business, but the unintended consequence of it was too great for affordable housing prices. It was just too much, and people can make money in many different ways.
And one of the approaches that some communities have taken is it requires it to be owner occupied, and you can't lease out the entire place. You can lease out a room or two.
Yeah, which is that's
But the owner needs to be there the majority of the time. So there's not a one size fits all regulatory scheme out there that communities have found. There's a lot of variety depending on your community's goals of what you're trying to accomplish. Some communities, it's an important part of who they are, maybe more resort towns, or in some areas, they want it. And so this might be something in an area that makes sense to do it. It might not, but there's a lot of ways to approach it.
I think it would be good for further discussion in a future meeting.
So in this instance, we basically have two choices, which is to recommend approval or recommend denial. We don't, we
Of the
can't.
zoning change to
Of the
HS.
zoning. That's it.
I'm being clear, but yeah, just
Of the zoning change.
this is what his intent with the property is if he gets the zoning change.
And you need to remember, so this is a legislative change. And so ultimately, the decision maker will be the municipal council. They have very wide discretion on whether to change the zone. And if they do, it would allow this type of project to happen. And so in looking at it, your role would be to look at all the facts and circumstances surrounding it and make a recommendation ultimately to the council. Do you recommend approval of the application or denial of it? Or maybe it could work in some limited fashion, and the developer has proposed a development agreement. The form of, the general form of which, as a city legal form, we're okay with, but the specific terms and provisions of it could be amended. So you can pass an ordinance that allows this, but by development agreement, you restrict it down to what they can do.
So let's say it goes through and then the city changes the way they handle Airbnb retroactively. That pretty much makes his 84 units obsolete.
But possibly depending on the nature of the regulation. And so to come in and saying these are Airbnb, the intent may be to rent them out in that fashion. At the end of the day, somebody owns these units, and there are what, two per yellow block there. So somebody would basically own 43, I'm sorry, 42, I need to read the reports more closely, 42 duplexes. And their intent is to use them as Airbnbs, but at the end of the day, these are residential units in kind of duplexes, basically.
If they live on one, they can rent the other.
Yes, somebody could, and they could be sold in that way. And so in your looking at this issue, you need to look at impacts to the neighborhood, impact to the traffic pattern, impact to just the city in general of how this would function and operate.
But if it's an HS zone, can they then sell them as individual residences, or would it have to be rezoned for residential?
Well, typically in land use, you regulate the use of the land, not the form of ownership. And so,
I meant for people habiting.
well, the regulations in the HS zone they would allow people to own homes.
This would be a tourist court, that's where it's going.
Did you say tourist home?
No, court, like a motel, hotel type of thing.
So if they had on-site reservation or check-in, lobby and everything, it would be treated as a hotel. Or a
That's
motel,
the
right?
use in the HS.
In the HS zone.
A single family or not.
So it's not necessarily an Airbnb, although they may advertise it that way, it would be operated in that
It's the same
hospitality.
Same use, different name.
Hospitality is probably better.
And so if they wanted to sell this, let's say the city and everybody thought this is a fantastic project. And the business model, for whatever reason, just doesn't work. And it's really not going to be successful. And the idea is, well, let's turn this into a residential project. What we need to do as a community is come back and really rezone it. And then you would have the concerns about, okay, what about connection to the public road and a lot of those things also.
So just for clarification, you said in HS zone, single family homes are not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just making it clear that, and then it would have to be rezoned.
So if he decides, let's say, this portion doesn't work, he just wants to do the residential units, he would have to come back and reconsider, the planning commission and council would have to reconsider some other zone that will allow residential use other than tourist or hospitality type. So we're basically, based on the use, treating it as a hotel, but they're not stacked, they're spread out.
Could I ask, why is this, I understand you answered it with the road connections, but people are very creative. Why is this valuable land in Orem still available? What are we running into outside of the road connections? Because it sounds like nobody around there wants those road connections, so why can't they come together and agree on something that would work for everybody?
Great question. And can we see the whole property around it as well? Cause I had some questions about it. So there's a whole parcel of land in between.
There's the whole
So this is owned by another landowner. The brothers, so it's Peterson Brothers, I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. This is one brother, the other brother or brothers sold this portion to a previous, and now this gentleman has bought this from Peterson. You're gonna hear from this gentleman tonight. But I think there's a disconnect there, but they've held it for years. It was farmland, he's continuing to farm here. So I think it's just been in ag. So
But it's
now we're
also on a
starting
hill,
to
right?
rebuild.
There's a slope, it's sloped down, it's not
So it's not
flat.
that it hasn't been, developed, it was just been used for different purposes. Now that they bought homes, others have come in with interest to develop it. That's what we're getting in the last couple of years. Some interest in developing this. It's not that it's been unproductive for 30 years.
So how long ago did Peterson sell this property? Do you remember?
I think, well, Peterson also had this, or the brothers had this piece here, which is developed into this.
The others?
Lexington. Lexington, so that was, so it's been probably 6-7 years ago.
So in that, what would they put in that square? What could go in that square there? Could you,
This one?
yeah, could you put some more
R12
homes
right
in
now.
there? Could you put residential?
Yeah, R12 is what it's currently.
R12? But it's landlocked, right?
So his access would have to come over here. I have an aerial picture. So right now, his own, so his access can come up. Here.
Which is his driveway.
And then potentially they could have some street here with this geometry, it's gonna be difficult to get an access here. Access. So ultimately, when Bach Homes came through, this connection stubbed, if you remember, stubbed over to that. Which is one of the reasons why we want some connection, because that's how we get how much use to serve some of these properties. But we end up being. So if we basically eliminate this and this, then these properties will, without some really creative idea, be able to get public access.
When did Bach Homes, when did he apply, or what happened to it? Like, did he get rejected, or?
We rejected them about a year ago.
We
A
rejected.
year ago?
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, because they were, I don't know if you were at that
I
specific
don't think
meeting,
it
but
was, I
like,
would remember that.
yeah,
They were smaller lots, single family, they were like 500 square.
I see, you wanted to go from R12 or R5.
Less units,
Okay.
we
Yeah.
rejected less units.
because they were
Really small,
Really
because they couldn't pencil for them
Yeah.
or something, okay.
well, there was no parking. So even like all the houses were close together and it was a windy street on a hill.
Mhm.
That was one of our reasons we did have problems with the connection between 1430 and what was it? 400 West.
I mean, with drawing and then now this gentleman.
If we were to do this from scratch, I think we would draw a line from the bottom of those apartments on the left over to the apartments on the right, and say half of that could be, yeah, half of that could be kind of like that, and the other part of it should be more like the neighborhood, and I think that's, you know, an ideal scenario, that's what you want, is keep the apartments where the apartments are, and keep the neighborhoods where the neighborhoods are. But the way,
What's considered, sorry,
no, go ahead.
what's considered transition housing? I mean, because we go from commercial to the high density and then between high density and the neighborhood. And this is a hypothetical question, but what kind of housing would be the ideal for that transition in that area?
Well, you see here, there's PRD. There are some like twin homes, these are like they're twin homes. So something like that, PRD would be something we would consider as a transition between one type.
So maybe like duplexes and or triplexes,
Twin homes.
twin homes.
That's kind of what the other development was that we turned down.
Not exactly, they were trying to make them all single family homes and they were packing it. Whereas opposed to the twin homes, you have a little bit of space. It's
Can I-
slightly different.
Can I ask a question? I feel very new and I don't feel quite confident in this, but this is my area. So I use those roads all the time. And I think I'm sitting here thinking, worst case scenario, I don't think this is so bad. I don't think it's gonna add as much traffic as I'm hearing the residents say. That if this doesn't go through and they start to put more apartments on there, that area can't handle it. That particular road where this would come out on, it really isn't terribly trafficked. It might go from Sand Hill to University, but coming from University to Sand Hill is a nightmare to try and turn left, because Sand Hill is a nightmare. That light from Sand Hill going onto University is a problem, and I don't think we can add any more traffic to that. So I think what I'm concerned about is, I know it's not desirable, but I think it could be a whole lot worse. That would really cause some problems in that area.
The majority of this traffic is either gonna go this way or this way. This does not have a light currently.
No, it doesn't have a light, and if you're turning left on Sand Hill, good luck. Turning right, you can get out.
So to your point, I think either development in San Juan, correct if I'm wrong, but this with 500 so parking stalls, there's a light there, but there's gonna be some that's gonna display, it's just gonna jam up San Juan.
But if that sells to somebody else, what else could they put on there that in my opinion would be even worse than
Well,
this?
let's say the council denies it, it's basically zoned single family.
It's all R12.
It's all 12
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So 12.
So it's just
It's no worse.
So why haven't we got somebody building on it
R12?
with R12? It seems like that would really keep.
So block homes, I mean, the only way to do R12 is to build multi-million dollar homes, which you're not probably gonna, when you're sandwiched in between high
Oh,
densities,
yes, you
you're
wouldn't
probably
want
not
that
going
there.
to build
Agreed.
$1.5 million homes.
Yes.
And that's what R12 is gonna get us right now.
Can we rezone it to something that would be more appealing for that area?
Get RA, so you get into that type of thing, but, so, yeah.
Is it
just
some of it
depends.
already? Sorry.
Some of it is.
That
Some of it
little,
was,
below the bottom blue line down is like RA.
This one,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the area. Finish that
The
neighborhood.
rest of it is R12.
yeah, the vast majority is R12.
see, well, you see right here, there's the RA.
Oh, yeah, there's a little more.
I think my biggest concern isn't the traffic pattern. My biggest concern is zoning it to the HS, then it doesn't work. And then we have that gas station debacle all over again. I think that is my concern in this scenario.
My concern is that road,
The only option is to
Doesn't
say it
support
doesn't,
the
we rezoned it to
traffic.
HS, now they have a development agreement, and that doesn't work. They would be back to negotiate the development agreement, right?
So that
something-
development agreement does give us protection from getting something that nobody wants on there.
It's only protecting what's based on what's in the agreement. Right?
Okay.
So the number of uses that are limited to is the protection the city's gonna have. And then the concept plan that's attached to it, any changes in either of those would have to come back to the
Cause I know there was something in our packet that was like, oh, well, if this doesn't go through, it will revert back, but I'm like, I don't think that's how zoning works.
with more units in it.
It would, yeah, it would revert back unless we as a city made application to revert back.
Before it's sold and somebody else has.
And the development agreement that you see in the packet was proposed by them. And the form of it is, the generalized form of it is okay. But I've been today, not enough time for the packet, but emailed some changes to it. And through development agreement, you can't have the property just revert back on the zone map. But there are things that we can do. For instance, I have some language in there that the developer would not oppose a rezone at a certain time frame. And so it's kind of hard to have a development agreement until you've had a fuller discussion about what the issues really are and the concerns. And then those can be put into the development agreement.
So another option to your point is to continue if for whatever reason there are some things you want to consider, because there's three options.
I'd like to point out that on 12 acres, which means it's not a whole lot more densely populated than a lot of our single family neighborhoods.
Yeah, just over.
About the same density. And the people aren't gonna be there all the time. It's not gonna be as full. They could get a little something about first.
Let me just run through my slides real quick, and then we'll address any more questions. So this is kind of outlines, the red outlines where that parking structure fits. So you can see these pretty much the underground structure. And then, of course, rezoning to the highway services. These are some of the elevations that they're proposing. This would be the sports complexes. Buildings. You can see they're 2-bedroom, two.
When did this come to your attention, this whole request to develop this?
We've been working with Mr. Dickey for probably over a year.
Okay.
It's been on and off discussions, and he's finally gotten to a point where we've have enough information that we can at least bring them back, have a discussion with the planning commission. So nice. So these are the two, this is 1430, this is the dead end of the fire access. So any other questions I can address? So two items on this, one is the street connections, and then the other one is the rezone that will go along with this crosstalk.
And the one thing I would like to point out on these two items, they are very interrelated. So on the street connection one, let's say you made a recommendation to the council to deny that. But you like this concept plan and you said, oh, okay, let's make a recommendation to approve this project. This project cannot work without those street connections going away. Because the code, when they came in for their project plan, it would necessarily require to connect into the public streets down here.
I have two questions. Jason, so if most of the neighbors are complaining about traffic, but the traffic is gonna be going to the road where high density is anyway,
It doesn't affect.
what does
what's
it,
complaining.
what difference does it make to them?
It doesn't.
It doesn't
So
go,
some of the people that you receive notices with actually,
yeah, but they're all, they're
They're
using-
surrounded by.
they're using
you know,
the same road.
Yeah.
It's not like the traffic inside that property will affect their quality of life. It's going in and out into a major street, they can make a right or left. That's question number one. Number two, as far as the noise ordinances, if that's an event center, when do they have to shut it down?
so it depends on the noise. If a police officer comes out and can hear, say they blaring loud music for whatever reason, you can hear it on adjacent property, that's a violation after a certain time, which is about 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Have you have any event centers in Orem that open after 10 o'clock?
We've had noise complaints with Neptuno down southwest, but it's been a couple of years since we've had issues from what I recall.
So not a lot. But that's basically, there's no specific timeline. It's about 10 o'clock, and if you can hear noise adjacent to your property, it's a nuisance determined by the police officer when they will ask you.
I think to Hasten's point, some of the letters we received were from those townhomes. Some of them were from the homes that won't be affected by this. I'm not sure where that motivation is coming from. That's,
They'll have to explain that.
yeah. It would have been interesting to take the time to say complaints were coming from here. Because it seems to me that if I do live over there, I'd be okay with that. But I think the people who live in the townhomes have a valid point.
Would it be fenced in?
To requirement.
Any traffic studies on 1430?
Well, the HSO, I take it back, so would be, when it's adjacent to a residential, would be a 7-foot masonry wall.
So it would be fenced in. Okay.
But we're a bunch of residential.
Sorry, say that again, what'd you say?
So we're a commercial zone, lots of residential zone, it would be required to have a 7-foot masonry.
So going back to the street connections, do we consider today in our meeting, what is actually optimum thing that should be done with this?
I'll let Sam address street connections.
The optimum?
Yeah, what needs to be done in your opinion with these street connections?
Well, I mean, there's a couple things, you have homes down here, these guys could develop. If this were to connect through right here, it allows all of these homes to develop. You have a handful of homes currently now that are on septic tanks. So they have septic systems, which has a leach field, which obviously is just gonna go ahead. If you allow this to go ahead and connect through, these homes here can connect to a sewer main that can come up. If this can connect through, this could be a cul-de-sac, and then these homes can develop. You could have homes that are, the sewer now gets to run down. These folks can go ahead and connect to it instead of having sewer. You allow this to go ahead and connect through. Now these folks in here, if they're wanting to go this way, they could drive through here, go up to the signal and go, as opposed to, as it's been pointed out, trying to get to Sand Hill Road and come down and have to go through all of this. These connect through. These folks in here see some relief. These folks in here could connect through this way, just get multiple options to go ahead and get around in this area. I mean, there's really not big destinations. The only big destination you have in here is what, the church here on Sunday. I mean, there's really not a draw for folks. The only people that are gonna be coming down through here are folks that live here. Now they don't have to go out to Sand Hill or wind up through here. They can go right to here and go. So I mean, you're just talking about convenience, and then in this case, you allow water main to get circulated through, you have sewer service where these folks are off septic. And then you got emergency.
So if that's approved, and then it blows up the other thing altogether.
Yeah, if we take these off, then these folks will always be on septic. These folks have a septic tank that's uphill from them. And there's always that, and then you're now forcing all of this to go to here. This is probably gonna end up, you got a signal that's likely gonna happen here. Then there's more signals. I mean, it just.
Is there a reason why this hasn't been approved to move forward with these street connections in the past?
You mean project wise?
Yeah.
I would imagine, one, you didn't have willing sellers at the time, and now you have a willing seller, but maybe they're asking for a lot. So people are trying to come up with a product that pencils for them, right? And that's why Bach Homes had higher density. This gentleman wants to put in the other ones.
So Jim, one of the concerns we had back a year ago was the one road, not Sandra, the one road, 1430, there's a ton of students in the apartments. We were worried about them diverting off into the residential.
And that's what I was gonna say, I think that's why we don't wanna connect that diagonal one. I don't think you wanna connect the single family homes to 1430.
Right.
You don't want all those students coming into the neighborhoods. So I couldn't support that connection road, but the other two, that makes a little more sense.
But to your point though, I mean, just as an advocate, why are they coming here?
Yeah.
Is it because they live there? I mean, there's no
No,
student
no,
center.
they come there when there's an accident, when there's traffic problems, depending on your.
Well, that's not just students, that's anyone who's trying to get through here, that's the intelligence.
Provo,
There's an accident there, they're trying to get home, I mean, I guess, to your point, I mean, the only people that are going here is because they live there or going to business.
Not right, if you have nurses, there are lots of people who work, for example, in the Provo Hospital, it will be much fast, it could be just as fast for them to go down that way as it would be to
A lot
go
of
to
people from Provo wind their way through there to get to the freeway.
But I don't think we want any more people winding through our,
Yeah.
our single family homes, that needs to stay protected.
We want Provo to have access to the highway in another place, that's what.
Yeah, Grand
Yes,
View.
let's get Provo a whole nother access, so they leave Orem alone. So I think we're at an impasse still. It will be helpful to hear from the residents and the property
You did a
owners.
study on 1430 and the potential impact for.
Traffic.
So there is a traffic study, Sam will have to update that in the planning commission itself, they did provide a traffic study.
Is there anything else? And you've heard it right a second, because we need to adjourn to the other room and have a few minutes of transition, so. Is there traffic impact?
Sure would haven.
Okay.
Sit in the back.
It wasn't in our packet,
I didn't.
there wasn't anything in our packet.
There was
So-
nothing in the back.
All the.
The And I'm
That's my
gonna,
biggest concern.
let's adjourn so we can move to the other room and then we'll have a meeting. We can talk about this further.
Well, I don't care about that. So it's all reviewed it, so just let them go back. Because the thing is that
I'm just gonna test now.
I'm ready.
All right, I call this meeting to order and we'll get started with an invocation from Murray.
Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful to live in this wonderful country and to have the many freedoms we enjoy, to live here in Utah and here in the city of Orem in Family City, USA. We're thankful for our leaders and for the opportunities we have being members and residents of this community. And we pray thy spirit to be with us as we talk about the future of the community and the proposed developments that are here. Please bless us with a spirit of understanding and with the ability to listen and be civil. And we pray for thy blessings to be upon all of us, and do so in the name of thy son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Before we get started tonight, there was the former item 3.3, which was the redevelopment of the former metal gold property. That item has been withdrawn from this meeting and there will not be a public hearing at this time. It has been rescheduled for November 15th at our planning commission meeting. And at that time, we will have a public hearing and take comments. So you're welcome to stay and be a part of our meeting. But at this time, there will not be a public hearing on that item. Okay, we will begin with item 3.1.
Okay, item 3.1 is a vacation of Thomasville Plat B and approving the amended Thomasville Plat C. This is simply a modification to one of the lots within a current subdivision currently zoned R75. It's a 4-lot subdivision right now. They're simply wanting to amend lot number 2 to add a drainage easement on that lot in favor of lots 3 and 4, including lot 2. So that's simply the proposal tonight is simply amending this one lot. Staff has reviewed it and recommends the planning commission approve it as proposed. Be glad to address any questions.
Any questions for the city? Okay. Is the applicant here? Would they like to come forward and say anything? Are you good? Okay. Then do we want to move for motion?
I make a motion that the planning commission vacate or make a recommendation to the city council, we vacate lot 2 of Thomasville Plat B, approve the amended plat of Thomasville Plat C located generally at 488 North, 450 West in the R7.5 zone.
I second.
Helena? Aye.
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 Motion passes. Item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is vacating Lot 2 of State Street Common subdivision and approving State Street Common subdivision Plat B, 877 North State Street. The property is split into C2 at the front. You can see on the slide here. Let me get my laser pointer. These lots up front that front on State Street are zone C2. The property in the back is zoned C3. They are proposing to subdivide lot 2, which you can see here, which was originally done with a larger lot. They're coming forward and splitting it into 3 lots that you can see there. The 2 lots on State Street will be developed with retail. The back lot will be developed as when that comes in at the Women's and Crisis Center. This is the current street view. Staff has reviewed that and recommends that this get approved as proposed. Any questions that I can address?
I just noticed there's access on lot 1 and 3, the top and bottom lots, not the middle lot, right? The access to State Street, is that just looking at the traffic plan there, is that right?
So if you look, sorry, let me go back to this plan. Yeah, so there is access as it goes. Turn my laser pointer.
At the top and at the bottom, but not in the middle one.
So this goes, yeah, all the way through. So there will be access. There's a access here on State Street and an access here on State Street. So all of them will have the ability to come down either here or through this one, or when this is developed, we'll be able to go through to Fourth West as well.
Okay, is the applicant here? Would you like to come forward and say anything at this time? Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Or are we ready to move to motion?
I think the applicant did everything we asked them to do, haven't they? So I don't know how we could not approve it.
Yeah.
I recommend that, or I guess, recommend we vacate, the planning commission vacate lot 2 of State Street Common subdivision and approve State Street Common subdivision Plat B located generally at 877 North State Street in the C2 and C3 zones.
I will second.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, motion passes. All right, item 3.3.
3.3 is an amendment to the, go to the next page, to the street connection master plan for the Lakeview area. You can see the location outlined in red. The applicant is here proposing that we amend the city, recommend to the city council, planning commission recommend to city council, the amendment of the street connection master plan. You can see the 4 circles in red. Right now, the master plan requires that whenever any development comes in, either behind in this area here, or up in here, or in this area here, that a connection, it doesn't dictate where the connection, but there is a connection between those dots, either, this way, or however way it's configured, it just needs to be addressed when development comes in. The applicant tonight is requesting that those 4 dots be eliminated off of the master plan so that when development comes in, they would not be required to connect those streets. So these are this is 1430. You can see the tree line. That's where one of the connections would need to be. And then this is the other one on 400 West, looking from Fourth West. Yeah. Just a couple of important points of street connection. It does allow the landlocked properties not to be exacerbated, I guess. If we eliminate those, then the potential of some landlocked properties would be an issue going forward for future development. That does allow, would require, or there would be an ability to have grid networks. It would allow sewer and water connections within a public street. It would allow traffic circulation for fire, police, ambulance, things like that. So just the grid network is important, and staff does support the ability to have those grid networks. So staff recommends the Planning Commission consider a recommendation of the council regarding the Lakeview Street connection map by eliminating those. Be glad to address any questions or to eliminate.
My question is, the applicant has requested a connection that's not on the applicant's land. Why would the applicant do that if it's not even part of the development? It seems that's the land that's to the east of the city-owned property, so.
Yeah, the applicant's here, so he would probably need to address that.
Okay, just looks a little bit like a red herring, but I don't know.
Any other questions directly for the city? Okay.
Can we, I would support removing the connections, definitely on the west. I'm not sure how I feel about the ones on the east. I mean, does this have to be a package deal?
It does not. Planning Commission can make a recommendation for one or the other, or both, or
Neither.
or none. Yeah. So you do have the discretion to make a recommendation.
Okay. Then I'm going to ask the applicant if he'd like to come forward this time and say anything, particularly because this item addresses the connectors. Can we talk about that part first?
Chair.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
Just a point of procedure with this.
Thank you.
So we have the general plan amendment with the connectors. That's the item that's technically in front of us. And then the rezone is the next item. And my guess is on these are so interconnected and interrelated that people will probably address both. You could open the hearing for both items, have Jason maybe continue and explain the project, and then have the applicant address both items, and then the public can address either item in their comments. And then when it comes time to a motion, the Planning Commission would address each item individually for a separate motion. And that might be a little more efficient.
That's fine. We can do it that way.
I go sit down then?
No, we still need you to do,
Okay.
we're still okay with you doing your presentation then. So you can kind of do the whole thing now.
Yeah, I live close to the bottom right, red dot, and my story kind of dates back starting about 10 years ago. I'll try not to take too much time, but we were looking at buying that home, and the neighbors, when they saw us with the real estate agent, came out and said, "Hey, you got to be careful. The city's probably going to connect 1600 South." And, so we went to the city, neighbor and my wife and I, and talked to them, and we found out it's not the city who would do it. The city clarified that the landowner and developer would work it out. Of course, but there was, if it was, on the master transportation plan, it would have to happen. So to me, that was good enough. I said, okay, as long as I control the land, a developer will have to work with me. So we bought the place. And then about 6 months later, I started looking at a house just to the north, which kind of 1600 South would go between us and the house to the north. And I said, wait a minute, they could put the road right through there. So I talked to the neighbor and I said, hey, is there a chance your house would be for sale? And he said, yeah, good timing. So my wife didn't really want me to spend the money, but we bought it just to keep the road from going through, because what we heard from all the neighbors all around us is for years, I don't even know if it's 50 years or how long, they're all afraid that the road's going to come through. And it could bring traffic from Sand Hill Road, I-15, it'd be a shortcut to BYU, 44 home games, BYU, UVU. So they're just all paranoid about it. And I said, well, I can do something about this. We'll get the house. And if you look straight to the north of the top right dot, just south of University Parkway, I think it's 1400 South. Just north of that, there's Golden Corral, America First Credit Union, and it goes all the way to the west, clear over basically to Krispy Kreme. And there's a wall that divides the commercial on the north from the neighborhood to the south. And that keeps that part of the neighborhood very calm and peaceful. There's no through roads coming through or anything like that. And so over to the left of the yellow triangle, there's a forest, and that's just a barrier exactly like the Golden Corral barrier. And there's another one up by Center Street behind the Target. That Target commercial has a wall behind it. It protects the nice neighborhood, keeps any through traffic from coming through. So it's a good thing I bought the neighbor's house, because I had, in the next few years, I had 4 or 5 different developers, some of them really pushy, come up to my house, knock on the door. I kept trying to run them off, but they wanted to buy our land. We had, with those two lots, we had 3.3 acres and only 2 houses on it. And so anyway, so about 2.5, 3 years ago, I have llamas. I raise llamas. We brought some llamas to the house, and they were grazing on the lawn. One of them got loose. I couldn't find him. And anyway, I went down in the forest, old Leroy Peterson's abandoned house, and there was one of the Peterson nephews loading up a lawnmower onto the trailer, and I helped him do it. And he said, hey, all the lawsuits, all the liens for all this land have been settled. It's going to come up for sale. And I said, really? And who are the real estate agents? And there's 2 pieces of property. Anyway, it took the one, I found out who that guy was, went and talked to him, and it was already under contract. But the other piece, it took like a month to track down who the real estate agent was. And I got to him about 4 weeks before they were going to put it on the market. And he goes, oh, you're on my list. I was supposed to call you. We want to know if we can buy a piece of your property over on the west end so we can put a road and connect it. And we're going to put 10 townhomes and 5 houses. And I just like, no way. This is why we're talking. And I go, how much do you want for it? And I go, that is outrageous, but I'll take it. And so by the grace of God, I, just anonymously, goodwill for the neighborhood. Excuse me. Despite all the trauma and trouble it caused my wife and family, we bought it. And because now they had to deal with me, and the road was not going to go through. And then I looked at the other neighborhood down to the south of the bottom left dot, and I just thought, if I was them, I would not want a road connecting from the north coming through. You have all that other traffic. You're going to have student encroachment. You're going to have, just you name it, all kinds of problems. And anyway, so I came up with this idea eventually. I said, and I love looking out the window with the trees. We're up by the forest. And I thought it would be so cool if we could have like cabins in the forest, kind of like up at Sundance, where we could keep the forest. We could put barriers on the roads down at the bottom, lock gates, but still so the fire department, police can get in and out. We could keep the traffic from coming through. We could maintain that barrier just like we have at the other 2 locations. And I'm not a developer. My business is making archery products for bow hunters. I've never, I didn't know what I was doing. So I just went into the city and I said, hey, you have this idea. What do you think? What can we do? And they said, well, the current zoning, you're going to have 60-foot-5 wide streets, curb and gutter, sidewalks. It's going to be like 80 feet wide. And I go, well, that's going to wipe out the forest. That'll ruin it. And I said, well, what can we do? And they eventually, after, a couple months, they said, well, if we recommend, if we zoned it commercial highway services, and we had a development agreement where it's a contract with the city that only the development you propose would go in there. And if it didn't, it would revert back to residential. That, and we would have to work out all the bugs through DRC and stuff, that it would be okay. And so at their suggestion, I applied for a rezone. And like I said, my sole intent is to preserve the neighborhoods, to keep the family-friendly environment. There's some of these, our neighbors here who want residential, but half of the homes, I've been told, and up in our neighborhood too, have renters in them. and they have rental units, and there's all kinds of cars and traffic. And as soon as you put residential in there, in my opinion, you can't control who buys it, who sells it, who lives there. And so anyway, my development idea was the best thing I could think of that kept the forest, that provided the barrier and had a way that could bring some revenue to the city, and it could pay for itself, and it could have different types of activities and events, venues that the community could use. And there's all kinds of objections. I'm sure people will disagree, but all of it can be solved just like the other commercial developments that I mentioned. And like, for example, 90% of the activities that we would have here would be indoors. There's only, other than the parking in front of the cabins in the forest, there's only about 50 ground level parking stalls. Everything else is underground. And the only outdoor activities would be, there might be some outdoor seating on a patio at a restaurant. There could be a couple of places where they could have an outdoor garden area for a wedding reception, and there's a couple of pavilions. So if you say, I've been to Brick Oven, and there's 90 parking stalls there. When you get out of the parking lot, how noisy is it? All the activities indoors. If you say you go to the Provo City Center Temple, they have underground parking. They have some ground level parking too. All the activity is inside. This would be hospitality, so it would not be like short-term rental Airbnbs. It would be managed by, we've contemplated contacting Marriott. There's some other professional organizations. So just like the temple, they have organized, structured management. Everything's quiet and peaceful. We would have that there. And that's pretty much my story. So I won't tell you how much money I put into this and how much time and effort, but it's all totally sincere. After I bought that first piece of property, there was a developer that I got it from. The real estate agent liked me because he heard my story about how I hunted him down. But I turned down a 6-figure profit within like 2 days of effort. I could have gone to the bank with, because to me, it wasn't about the money. And yes, if you look at my development proposal, we try to make it look like it will make money because the city wants it to be successful, and it has to be nice. It has to be high end, but I'm not doing this because I want to retire in the Bahamas or get a yacht or anything like that. I live right next to it. I'm one of the neighbors, and that's kind of my story.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the developer right now? Gary, if we want to postpone this and go to the next item, do we have to make a motion to do that first?
No, you can just read in that item also.
Okay.
And invite the Jason and the public and the applicant to address both items.
Okay. So can he do his presentation on the next portion first before we go to the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Jason did? I thought we just did. Okay. Jason, yeah, I'm asking then we're going to move and introduce item 3.4 so we can combine and go forward that way.
Okay. So the applicant, the property outlined in red is the subject property. He's proposing that property be rezoned from the R12 and R8 zones to the highway services zone, which you can see the pink color on the top. That's what he's proposing to connect it to and rezone that whole property to that zone. He's also proposing a development agreement that would limit the number of uses to what he's proposing on his concept plan, which we'll get into here in just a minute. So he is proposing 84 detached, 42. Each of those contain 2 units. So 42, you can see in the yellowish color are the residential units. So let me turn on my. So these right here would be the units, 42 of those. Each of them have 2 units, so 84 total units. He is proposing a multi-purpose area at this location, a retail office or retail facility at this location, then a wedding reception and restaurant in this location. And you can see onto the left side of your screen is the underground parking structure that he was referring to. So you can see the outline in red kind of gives you where that structure is related to the property. So the entrance is right here down below, and then it goes underground and goes all the way under here. So it kind of circles down to level 3, which is here, up to level 2, and then out, with the access being on 1430 north at that location. A total of 570 parking stalls. Like he's indicated, there's about 50 on the surface. The majority of those would be underground. He does have some sports courts. I'm assuming pickleball, tennis could be some of that. And then there's a pool at this location. So again, the zoning currently you can see on the left would be the R12, R8. He is proposing to go to the entire thing to highway services. A couple of renderings that he's proposing. You can see the sports center on the left side. And then the cabins or whatever you want to refer to here. The wedding reception, I'm assuming, is this one here. And then the pavilions as you go through the property. There are 2-bedroom units with a kitchen, one at ground level, one at second level. The 2 different units, one would be accessed through the stairs. They are providing 1 parking stall per unit. So if we're treating it like a motel, hotel, we require 1 stall per unit. So that's typical of what we require. So he's providing that as required. Any questions that I can address with his concept plan and the rezone? So this application is simply to rezone. Well, it's not simply, but to rezone it to the highway services zone. He is proposing to proffer a development agreement that would be signed prior to going to city council. And that would stipulate these elevations, the concept plan, and anything else the planning commission wants to put in the development agreement to make sure that it's binding before it goes to council. So I'd be glad to address any questions.
I had a quick question. He had mentioned that if this doesn't go through under that development agreement, it would resort right back to residential.
It would not.
It would not.
No, it would have to come back through to the city to rezone it to whatever zone the city would want it to rezone.
Can we make that a stipulation right now?
No.
No.
I'd have to have Gary address that, but according to state law, we can't require that to be reverting back to.
How many square feet are each of these cabins? So one's second level, one is main level. Let's see, I guess I could figure it out. Around 900. All right.
There you go. Quick math.
Well, it's a guess, but I think I'm close.
I'd have to pull my calculator out. So.
Did he provide any elevations to the south, what it would look like to the residents who are down below? Because I only saw the north and the east or east view. So I don't know what this would look like to the people who are already in the residential areas.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is one side. I don't think we have all 4 elevations. So this would be the one side of the cabin. This would be another side. So
And you had stated earlier that this is to have a 6-foot-high masonry wall. Is that correct?
7 feet.
7 feet high wall that goes around the whole perimeter.
Wherever it abuts a residential zone.
Okay.
Murray, I'm pretty sure that the images we're looking at here will be seen from the more commercial side. From the residential side, he's trying to protect the forest, so they probably won't even see this.
Oh, no, I've got it pulled up where the clubhouse is or whatever this big facility is. There's nothing between them and the residents, right? The trees are.
You're meaning the townhomes, not the single family homes.
No, I'm talking about the multipurpose event center. That will be visible to the residents who
But
are.
it would be to the townhomes that are right to the left of it. Most of the single family
residents are
homes are to the
townhomes.
south.
No, I'm talking about the residents to the south. There are residents to the south across a field.
Okay.
And they will be able to see the multi-event center. I just don't see any
Got
elevations
it.
for
I
that.
understand.
Yeah, so we got the north and the east, but I would imagine the south and the west would be similar.
Okay, any other questions at this time? Okay, then I'm going to open it up to the public hearings. Just a couple of items before I do open it up for the public hearing. I just want to reiterate, I think most people are aware of this, but the item regarding Meadow Gold is not being heard tonight. We're only focusing on the Sherwood Haven development at this time. We would invite you to come forward one at a time for 3 minutes. Please try your best to keep it to 3 minutes. We have a lot of people. We want to hear from all of you. And if you could, when you come forward, state your name, and then you can give us your comments. So I will open it. Oh,
Could I make a request? I think it's important that as you speak, we know if you are from the townhomes or if you are from the single family homes, because your perspective would be different and we need to understand that.
yeah, but we don't require address. I just want to be clear that they don't have to say their address. So yes, so I will open for a public hearing at this time.
My name is Stephen Strong. I live at 1664 South 500 West. I'm in the homes just south of what would this be, this development. I've lived there for 44 years in the same neighborhood. I have 3 kids. We've plan on living there the rest of our lives. I'm dead set against this idea. If you recall, a year ago, Bach Homes tried to come in and change the zone to medium density, and we had hundreds of signatures fighting that proposal. And one of those that went around and got signatures for that was Jay Lichty, the developer for this. At the time, had no idea that he had interest in this property or what properties he had bought. But he was one of us fighting alongside, trying to preserve our neighborhood. And so we managed to beat that and keep it, residential zoned. Mr. Lowe, to answer your question, why would the person blocking off the roads and want to landlock? Well, he's the developer, right? The person who's blocking the roads off is the developer, and that's why he wants that and to landlock. But Larry will talk more about that. Yeah, I want to keep it residential. That would preserve our neighborhood. It would maintain the same fill and same size of homes that we have in that neighborhood, even if the roads were connected. It would not increase the traffic that much if they were. I have a lot of concerns changing this to highway commercial, and if the land was sold off and then another developer would come in, even with that rental agreement, we just agreed that it'd have to go through committee to get it back to residential zoning. Once the zoning's changed, it's changed. It would be highway commercial for any developer to come in and change that. We had a bait and switch, the same thing that happened with the townhomes below us. We had a developer come in. It was a beautiful plan. Everyone agreed on it. He bought the property. They changed the zone. 2 days later, sold the property and built high-rise apartments. The same thing happened. We don't want that to happen. We were told that was the barrier road between this and the commercial or barrier zone. We've already, but that didn't happen. We want to maintain this as residential. It's the same argument if you go north a couple blocks where UVU put in all those apartments, all the residents in that neighborhood, they didn't want that. That was kind of a sore spot for all of them. This is, we're 6 blocks south of that, kind of proposing the same thing. These are nightly, and again, these are nightly rentals. They're Airbnb nightly rentals, 84 units in there. That's a lot of traffic, even though it's not coming through our neighborhood. Would you like to live on the backside of 84 units? And they've proposed fire pits all through there. I don't want to be smelling, the noise, the smoke. I don't want any of that. It would completely change the element of our neighborhood. I am for preserving our neighborhoods in Orem. I plan on living here the rest of my life in that neighborhood. I have a beautiful home, and we want to continue. No, my time's up. We want to continue maintaining, what we feel is important to us. And so anyway, thanks for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Larry Peterson. Can I get you to pull out the whole big screen on the whole area there? Because the whole area there used to be my family's. I have very emotional ties to the property, the same as Mr. Leachke does. I can cry, I can feel bad, but I can't stop what's happening. It's going to happen one way or the other. When I found out he was buying the property, I came into Orem City and I wanted to find out, because I don't have a right of way to get on my property. Now I'm going to show you my property. My property comes where the purple is. It comes up over to the red, down past the apartments, all the way to Sand Hill Road, and then all the way back. It's approximately 10 acres in there. And so I talk to the city about a right-of-way coming in from Sand Hill Road, because I don't have anything else. And they said I can't put any entrances on Sand Hill Road. They're not letting them in there anymore. There's too much traffic on Sand Hill Road, and they're not doing it. So I went and got, my brother owned the piece up there, and I got 3 acres to join my property. And the realtor, which is my nephew's right here, he helped me get it. And there was supposed to be a right-of-way into the new property that goes up here on the top, because it's being sold. And so just to take and show you what, I've talked to the new buyer, and he does not want me to have an exit out of my property. But I will show you what he's designed. Coming down here on the bottom here, on 1600, there's a partial lot that I have there, but I don't have it wide enough. It's not wide enough for a road. I have to purchase more ground from another individual. So there is no right-of-way out there. And so, but he wants to propose all my ground, which is 40 buildings, because I'm building regular homes, all out that one spot, and I have to go down Sand Hill Road and go up, and Sand Hill Road already backs up to my property from the red lights. I don't want to have to do that. I want, you see that road up there, 1438 or 1480, whatever it is. I own the property on the side, and my brothers and I own both sides. We put that road in to make the traffic so it could get up and around that. And that's why there's a light up there on 4th West. That's because of us. Now we're wanting to take and stop it. Well,
thank you.
Mr. Leachy's house is on 1600. He wants to close that road off. 4th West, he wants to close off. And he wants everything to go down here if you can get the property purchased. And then basically everything's going to end up going mostly out on Sand Hill Road with a little bit going filtering up through.
Thank you, sir.
My strong suggestion is Orem City did not look at these roads. They didn't even listen when I went in to go talk to them. They should listen now, but I will be to this meeting and I'll be to the next one. So I'm against, I don't care if he puts in homes. It's residential, he can do what he wants. That's okay. And eventually by putting a rent in, I will get a right away in there. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I'm Dawn, and I am a family residential living south of it, and I am not in favor of this for a couple of reasons. It's just taken problems with putting residential homes in there. I'm in favor of keeping what we have planned with the residential homes. He's just taken problems saying, oh, we're not going to have renters and you don't know who's going to live there. Well, yeah, well, you don't know that. But now we're having nightly up to 336 people nightly changing in that area. And so I think I'd rather have residential that might be rented a little bit and knowing who might live there, because I would have interaction with them. Another thing that I find very interesting is he says it's all indoors, but I see a pavilion about 4 houses away from me and fire pits As you can see in the article that was in the newspaper in KSL about the problems that Orem City is having with that large goat house. How do we know? He don't want, and he's saying that he'll have complete control over it until he sells it to the next person or to the next person, and then they change it. I'm against the rezoning. There's a couple other things that, let's see, and it's all peaceful and quiet until they don't make money and then they do sell it. So I am definitely against it. I think it'll bring more traffic, especially on 1430, where it's already 1430 going on to Sand Hill. That's accidents waiting to happen, especially because of Lexington Homes. There's everybody parking on that. We don't need that type of traffic going up there either. So I hope that the city council really considers this.
Thank you.
My name is Rob Moore. I own a townhome in the Lexington development and represent a daughter who owns an adjacent townhome. First found out about this, there was a letter sent out indicating that this was going to be proposed at some time. I had some concerns about the rezoning of the property and all of the commercial that was going in adjacent to where our townhome is. And so I composed a response to that letter back to, I assume it was Jason. I'd have to go back and revisit that letter to find out. Never received any response and communicated once again, never received a response back. So it seemed like at the time a disingenuous effort, that letter to placate, it seemed to be those on the south side without considering the concerns and issues that might arise from those living in the Lexington properties. I like the characterization that was given earlier about this effectively being an Airbnb community with a high rate of turnover. My daughter, who owns an adjacent townhome, has an ecclesiastical responsibility where she is in touch with many of those that live on the south side, and her understanding of the popular opinion of those within Lexington and on the south side is that they very much oppose this kind of development because of the rezone and what it would introduce into what we would hope would remain a residential family-focused area. So on her behalf and mine as well, and voicing for other Lexington residents, we would respectfully request that this not be approved and that in the future a residential rezone be considered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Scott Strong. I live at 1586 South, 235 West, just off 1600 South. The reason I'm here, I stand here like, it's a great project. It looks nice if you could find a piece of commercial ground to put it on and not put it in a residential area. Now, I think that's the problem. Everybody would like to have a new reception center or own a reception center, but the hard part is finding the property to do it. Now, I don't think it's obligated by the city or a residential neighborhood to change it to commercial in order to get that reception center. Also, the nightly rentals, everybody like to have some nightly rentals right in there, but you have to be zoned right. Correct. You can't put nightly rentals in a residential neighborhood. This will be right next to homes. That would be illegal for them to have an accessory apartment. Yet they can have nightly rentals. And as a matter of fact, they couldn't rent their homes out for less than more than 3 people. They're not related. This here just it's a rental thing. It's a great, it looks like a wonderful project to be nice, but it's in the wrong area. It's in a residential area. And we want to maintain that right there. So I would suggest, and the other thing I was thinking of, nobody goes into a project like this hoping that it'll fail, But there are commercial ventures that go bankrupt, that go belly up. And if this gets going here, I don't know what you'd have. If you have some residential homes in there and if people can't make the payments, you can sell the homes. But if you have a commercial project like this, it's just going to be I don't know, patrolled by the police to keep the homeless people out right there. But nobody goes in there to do that. Hopefully it wouldn't. But I stand here opposed to the rezoning of it, especially going from a residential to a commercial. That's a big jump right in there. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Marion Baxter. I lived 31 years in the development south, Wildwood Hollow, 466 West, 1640 South. I then moved in 2013, a block and a half east to 325 West, 1600 South. I will give you some perspective. I would like to share it because I think there's some issues here that happen to do with good neighbor policy. And one of the issues that we're facing is zoning. Zoning is in the master plan is for a purpose. And one of the things that I can give you some history on Lexington, we negotiated, fought, looked at design with the council, with the Alex Guerrero, the buyer out of California. And guess what? He got the zone, he got the change because of density and its location to UVU, which is the 4th largest university in the nation. And guess what? As soon as he got that zone change, even with the requirements that are attached to it, he turned around and sold it. And in prior councils then who are in place right now, they all say, oh, we're disappointed in, they didn't really follow it all. They can feel bad, but guess what? When you change a zone, it's a huge issue. So we've got density housing to the west there in Lexington. We've got residential to the east, a little south, and you've got Lake Ridge condominiums, and you've got the hotels and student housing to the north. So I am saying, all of a sudden I'm hearing underground parking. I've never heard of that before. And Jay is my neighbor to the west right now. I live on 1600. And history again, guess what? About 20 years ago, we fought to not let 1600 go through. And Paul Goodrich, who was the city engineer at that time, said, it makes no sense to put that through on the terrain that there is. And right now you're saying to me that you want to take those connector roads off. I'm not against, I am totally for connectability, but I want Larry and Gloria Peterson's property having access. We have just devalued their land if we landlock them. And they're talking about they want to do residential. And why does this development not have residential in place all the way up to the corridor on 1430 that needs the commercial if they're going to do what they're talking about doing? So thank you for the attention. I've got about 4 more points, but I'll save them for another time. But please spend some time, deliberate on this. It's very important. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Doug Vertel, and I live at 450 West, 1600 South, which is just right next to where this is going to be proposed to be put in. Let me say right off the bat, I think everybody that I've talked with is completely against a rezone. It's zoned now for residential, 35 homes, and that's where it should stay, right there. This whole development is a dream, because if you look at it, the concept of it does not even make sense. I talked to the city engineer a couple of months ago about closing 400. He said it's on the master plan to bring 400 all the way through. Mr. Lichty wants to landlock Mr. Peterson, not let him have any access whatsoever out of his land. He wants to block off 400. He wants to block off 1600. I was one of the ones years ago that said we don't want 1600 to go through. 400 has to go through, because anybody that develops in there, he can't take and lock the gates and then allow not any emergency vehicles, push all the traffic up to 1430, which is a hill by Krispy Kreme anyway. There's no way that he can develop all of this and push traffic out of one little area right through his commercial development. He doesn't have a road that goes through. It'll go right through where all the commercial development is. This is a poorly designed. He wants to keep the forest, but he also wants to put double what's allowed in there. He also wants to put fire pits in there. What happened in Maui? It could happen easily right there. People come to Airbnb, they build a fire, they forget about it. I was in Scouts for a long time. I know what happens with fires. They don't go and put it out. So what happens? We get a lot of wind through that area. 2 or 3 fires, a big wooded area, it goes and it'll affect all of the houses around as well as Lexington, because it would become a fire pit is what it would become. So all of this that he has proposed is not for this area. Do not accept a commercial development in that area. It should stay residential. It should stay R12. Let them put 35 homes. It's a beautiful view off the side of the hill to look down and see the Utah Lake, the Orem Temple, all of that beautiful area out through there. But if it goes commercial, then that area is destroyed. Don't even think that he would be happy to lock Larry out. He would be happy to lock Larry out of his property and not allow anything under 400. Then you've got a big issue right there. So my recommendation is, please don't change the zoning. Don't allow this development to go in because it's going to be a headache. I've come down, one last quick thing. When they put in Lexington, all that road that comes down, I have counted 120 cars coming off the hill by Krispy Kreme all the way down to Sand Hill Road. They don't have the parking in there. He wants to put underground parking. It's a water table
Thank you.
issue right there also. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mariah Craig. I live on 400 West. My husband and I have lived there for 13 years, and he actually lived there with his family for years before then. They live on that street as well. And we live there with our 4 children, and they're all elementary age. This is my Sophie, and she's in 1st grade. And here's what I have to say. We're a little concerned about the transient people that will be coming into this area, because my children, they love to ride their bikes. They ride their bikes with the neighbor kids, and it's a wonderful little neighborhood for our little family to live in. And I feel safe enough to let our kids go ride their bikes around. And there was a time when she was 18 months old, or about 18 months old. And she got lost in the stake center at church, and we lost her for 45 minutes. And I tell you what, as a mother, not being able to find your child, it was so scary. And having these neighbors here come and help us find our little child was just a wonderful experience for us as a family. And it makes me a little nervous having people that are only there for a night or 2. You know, we don't know them. And we'd love to have more residential neighbors rather than a community of people that are transient in and out. When this man came around to ask us to sign a petition, he did not give us all the information. He did not give us the information about what was going to be going in. And so I want you to keep that in mind. He was very dishonest with many of us neighbors. And I've talked to several of the neighbors that did sign his petition, but he didn't give us the information. And I feel very guilty that I signed it without doing my due diligence. But as a mother of very active children, we want to be able to allow our children to to roam around the neighborhood and feel safe. And so that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Steve Adams. I live at 458 West, 1800 South, over by the church. I'm just worried about this rezoning issue as well. The water table is a huge issue. Trying to build. I'm a builder. I worked in construction. I have a degree in construction management from BYU. You're going to have engineering, soil issues with that. It's a very poorly designed with all of that. With how high the water table is right there. With that, I'm also, I've been a stay-at-home dad a little bit here, and I have enough time at the school. This is my first year teaching over at Westmore Elementary, and so I would like to keep my family in this neighborhood as well. I am a father of 4, and 2 girls, 2 boys, and something like this just makes me want to move. So we've been promised so many things on Sand Hill Road with Lexington, with all these others. And man, the traffic is just horrible and horrendous now on Sand Hill. The parking violations all the way up Sand Hill because of Lexington are horrible. We were told we were going to get all these families. They even talked to our stake presidency and told them, we're going to get all these families. We'll rezone our ward this way. And now Lexington has 2 stakes of single people living in it, single wards in it. And so we were promised all these families, we were promised all these other 1.5 car parking spots throughout Sand Hill and all of these other issues. But Airbnbs just aren't really going to fit our neighborhood. And between Orem and Riverton, if you look at how many people live in Orem and how many live in Riverton, you'll be able to tell the statistics that Airbnbs really aren't for Orem because we just have too many people here already. The pollution, once again, you're adding more pollution, you're adding more traffic. We need to redesign the whole Sand Hill. That's another time for another time, but redesign Sand Hill and the how to get more flow through it. But yeah, just the soil engineering and aspects of all this. I know they love to fudge the numbers. They did this on Provo on Mile High Drive, and you've seen some of those houses. They've slowly, I've seen a $500,000 home slide towards the road, and now it's vacant because it can't be that close to the road. And so you're going to have major issues all through this. It's just really poorly designed, just like Doug Vertel said. So I'd love to keep my family in the neighborhood. I'd love to stay a school teacher and a builder in the summers, but I see stuff like this and it makes me want to move. So thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rosie Peña and I live in Lexington town and I have, and they are my family. So I hear the person who is complaining about, Lexington town and there's families who live there and I have family and we pay our taxes. And I think all of these people who are renting also pay their taxes. So we have a right to park on the streets. We are not in China where we are single families and that we don't have more children. So we pay our taxes. I don't know if you had a chance to go to Salt Lake. I went to one Sunday just because I came from another place to the airport. There is so many homeless on the streets for the life, the stress that they get, for whatever situation. These people who live in Lexington town are students and they need that space where they park their car. They are studying, they are not in drugs, they're not doing anything. If they, I don't know, the seating or whatever bill they didn't build correctly, it's not their fault of the people who lives there. So we, instead of accusing each other, we need to find a solution and work because it's not right that we will, some people from It doesn't matter if they are a student, it doesn't matter because all of them pay their taxes. People who live and have a family, I park outside because we have 3 parking, but we are 4 people at home. It's not right to accuse just the environment or whatever. We need to find a solution, and instead of accusing to each other, find a solution. And how can we fix this? It's already done. It's how it is situated right now. And what is the next steps? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
My name's Russell Pittman. I live at 2038 East, 9060 South in Sandy. I own a unit in Lexington, which I rent. And I guess even though I look at Lexington as a rental, there's no parking in there. I mean, I don't rent to students, I rent to a family, but I have 4 parking stalls. Somebody comes to visit, there's no place to park. And I think the whole idea of this is you're trying to sandwich too many people in too small of a space, regardless of what it's zoned. You've got, 94 units, he says, underground parking and 1 access in and 1 access out. I can just imagine what that's going to do to traffic to the folks that live on 1600 South. So I'm against this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm a student at BYU, and I work part-time at the animal shelter. And one of the things that I enjoy about Utah, having been born and growing up in the South, is that as you look out towards the edges of the spectrum that you can see, you see all these beautiful mountains. And I thought that you had to go far away in Utah to see the beautiful spaces amongst all the houses that fill the valley. But I found myself occasionally in the mornings and in the afternoons driving down these residential roads that I found very beautiful. And I found myself admiring the scenery right close to where it was, where there were trees and there were areas that looked local, and I was able to not have to look way out in the distance to see something beautiful. And I'm opposed to rezoning this area because this follows a route that I think would be beautiful to drive down if it was less commercial. And I find Utah to be a very beautiful state, and I don't want to push. I don't want to push people all the way to the edge of those beautiful mountains. I think it's really important to be able to appreciate the areas that you're in without commercializing it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll make one last call if anyone wants to come and say something.
My name's Chuck McCartney. I live at 326 West, 1450 South. I'm opposed to connecting the roads. The main reason we bought the lot where we built our home was because it was on a dead end. Excuse me. We currently have on our street alone, there are 19 kids. And we have students that try to run going west to try to get to the condos down there by Walmart. And then they realize it's a dead end and they turn around and rip back. If the streets are connected, that's going to be a big issue. We've got kids on the street. Kids are kids. Kids are going to play. Yeah, parents try to watch them, but still it's an issue. I'm not in favor of having the roads connected. I understand the emergency equipment, all that other stuff, but we've lived for quite some time with it like it is. This development, in my mind, it's my understanding that all the traffic is going to go to the north and not to the south, to 1600 South or to Sand Hill Road. I may be mistaken on that, but that was my understanding. Anyway, I'm not in favor of having the streets connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jeff Coons, and I'm Larry's nephew, and I'm representing my cousins who own these two parcels here. It looks like, they would like to get their inheritance. Larry's brothers passed away. We've been 4 years now and before you with Bach Homes with the product that we felt like stratified. If you look on 1430, that's commercial. How many of you would like to have your residential home, the corner lot, as you enter in there? And there was a structure designed then. What Jay has come up with does just that. It keeps the traffic, which was the problem they complained about with the previous time we were before you. But my cousins would also like to have their consideration, as all their neighbors say, you do it how we want or you don't do it. All they're saying is we would like to have something done so we can move on. I'm not a big bad developer. I'm just part of the family and I'm representing part of the family. And my cousins are asking me to be here tonight and to speak in their behalf that they would like to see some project approved by the city simply because we've done this for 4 years now and realized that there was a zone change then too. And the zoning unchanged puts literally residential houses right up against 1430. And that's not a solution either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gloria Peterson. I'm Larry's wife, and our property butts against the property that's up for development. I've lived in this area for 73 years. I was raised on Geneva Road, and my parents' home was torn down when they were going to build the Orem Temple. I married Larry 56 years ago, and I've lived up on Sand Hill and on 1600 South for 56 years. I've seen a lot of change in Orem. I wish it wouldn't have changed the way it has, but it has. I understand development it's just the way it's going to be. However, to develop it, the neighborhood has no problem with that property being developed in a responsible way. To have it put into a neighborhood that is like our neighborhood, nobody will object to that. Nobody. The last people wanted to do 5th acre lots. Yeah, the neighborhood didn't want that density. They want to have it go into like what we have to protect our neighborhood. There's nothing wrong with building new homes, but it needs to be what's there. It's absolutely wrong to put highway services in a residential area. Unless you live there, you have no idea the nightmare that's there because of traffic. Clear back when they wanted to put all these apartments in, they said, oh, we did a traffic study. It's just fine. We told them what would happen. Nobody listened, and it's a nightmare down there. To put an Airbnb type thing up in there, just like Doug said, there's just trouble waiting to happen. Said it's going to regulate the homeless guys that are up there. It's just going to bring more homeless guys. You're not going to have 84 units rented all the time. And what's it going to be? You don't put a multi-million-dollar project on that land and not make money. Jay says he's not into making money. You don't put that kind of money in if you don't want to make some money. And so, in my opinion, when it doesn't make the money, what's it going to turn into? You have to look to the future. What's it going to turn into? The people that live in our neighborhood are good people. They've been there and they came there because it was a little bit out of the city. It was more like a country place. It's not like that anymore. We strongly oppose closing off 400 West simply because, yes, it will landlock us. It makes it so that we don't have any way out. Jay would like to make you think you could bring a road down right next to my house in my driveway and make a road right through my driveway. He doesn't want 1600 to go through because it's right by his house. I don't want a road right next to my house. So I'm not in favor of the road being blocked up. I don't have a problem with 1600. It hasn't gone through. It doesn't bother me whether it does or it doesn't. But 400 West, you have to have the flow of traffic through that area, whatever you develop that. And blocking that off will not do that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, I'm a little nervous. My name's John Masalia. I live at 1552 South 300 West. And I am opposed to connecting the roads. We like the nature of our neighborhood, but I am in favor. I'm not opposed to this development and the zoning change. I feel that the Lichty's plan will keep the trees and provide us a buffer between our single family homes and the higher density homes that are to the north. I like the idea that it allows emergency vehicle access through the gates while not increasing the amount of traffic. I also feel that it could provide jobs to the youth that live nearby. And I like the idea of having more facilities for family reunions and weddings and stuff like that. I feel it's a good compromise between keeping it zoned for single family and the worst case scenario, which would be putting in a bunch of apartments in that area. I felt like there was a lot of contradictions in the things other people have said tonight, especially about 400 West. They want 400 West to go through so that they can have access, but then they expect it to not increase traffic. That doesn't really make sense to me. So I'm opposed to connecting all the roads just freely. I like the idea of having it zoned so that we can have gated entrances and so the emergency vehicles can get through, but we won't get all that cross traffic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Thurston. I'm representing my dad tonight who owns, Stephen Clark is his name, and he owns property on 1500 South between 300 West and 360 West. And this plan, I'm opposed to this plan because it landlocks a portion of his land and makes it not buildable. And I've had a dream for several years that part of the land that I might inherit, I could build a home on. And this makes it so I can't even build on a portion that my whole life several years of my life, I've had a plan to build on land that's in my inheritance. So I'm opposed to the road going through, not being landlocked, and the road becoming this area being developed because it causes, those areas to become landlocked. So I oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, last call. Does anyone else would like to come forward for the public hearing? Okay. You're the applicant. We'll get back to you. So we will then close the public hearing at this time. Staring at me. I know. Because there's several routes we could go right now. So give me half a second to think while I've been processing what everyone else has been saying too. I think we should call the developer back up and ask him any questions that we have from this. So would you care to come forward? Yes, the applicant, please. I'm sorry. To the microphone, please. I will allow you a 3-minute rebuttal before we start giving you questions.
Can I
If
have
you'd
a
like to.
chance or so? Okay. So there's a lot to say, but quickly. So I'm not trying to landlock Larry and Gloria. And if they're going to develop 40 homes on 10 acres and their house is right in the middle, they will have a street or two going by their house. And so here's a proposed potential several ways that they could have access to their land that I can just hand out to you guys, or you can come get, I don't know if you want them now. Second of all, the last lady that spoke, I know where their land is. They wouldn't be landlocked if the city had a cul-de-sac coming down in there. And it's clear over on the right side of the city property. It's not anywhere near over here. Secondly, there's lots of mention of Airbnb. This is not Airbnb. This is like a horizontal hotel. This is, it's completely different. It's, there's different rules, regulations. It's managed, it has on-site management all the time. There were 12 of us gathering signatures for the petition against the roads going through. And I forgot to tell in my initial story how I discovered finally the root cause of why we always had the fear of these roads coming through. It was that map you showed us with the red dots. When I discovered that, I ran around all the neighbors and said, hey, look, here's the problem. All we got to do is get rid of this thing and we don't have to deal with it anymore. And, you know, we're all busy. People don't have time to talk to you. I wasn't like trying to hide anything from anybody. And there was quite a few other people out there gathering signatures also. If you have commercial development here, you will not have connectivity on the south or the east to the residential areas. And that's how you will keep the traffic out. I mean, University Parkway is only a block away. And Walmart, I mean, and if you have residential and you connect the roads, you're just opening for traffic and parking problems, and you're risking, in my opinion, ruining the peacefulness of the residential areas. And that's why we have about 400 signatures of neighbors, a lot of them here up in both neighborhoods, who do not want the roads going through for that reason. As far as fire pits, you know, we follow the city fire code. It could be barbecues, it doesn't have to be fire pits. The multi-events center would have activities for kids, have sports opportunities. In the afternoons, we could have league play. There's all kinds, there's a real huge need for sport venue. All the public city places are all booked and taken. Let's see what else. I did not say that the development is not going to make money, and I don't want it to make money. It needs to make money, obviously, it needs to pay for itself. But the motivation is not me, a developer, come in and say, how can I rape the neighborhood and get rich? It's, for 10 years, I've been trying to solve the problem of the roads going through. And the goal with this whole thing is to have the neighbors, all of us, just look out at the forest and see the forest as we do now, except for it would have all the hobos cleaned out, all the druggies. It would be landscaped really nice, beautiful, and it would be quiet and peaceful. And Orem is Tree City, USA. Why are we going to go cut down the only old growth 10-acre forest in the city? It knocks down noise pollution from University Parkway and I-15. It knocks down light pollution at night. There's wildlife that live in there. And, you know, the young man, I didn't hear exactly everything he said about beauty and nature, but it's an oasis. And my goal is to preserve it as that way and make it so it maintains the barrier it is right now, but take away the problems it has. And I may have missed a few things, but, you know, let's see. There was an extensive traffic study done, very expensive. It shows that the streets and intersections coming into this right now are pretty bad. And with everything that would happen in this development, it wouldn't get very much worse. It would get a little worse, but not a lot worse. But there are some mitigations things. If a traffic light was put in, it would make it really, really nice. Last thing I want to say is there's a lot of things that probably most of us citizens aren't aware of, but probably but there is a potential for a high density overlay zone being forced upon us by the state, which would follow University Parkway, State Street. And I've heard if the BRT, bus rapid transit system, gets put in place, then it piggybacks with this being forced on us. And this property might be close enough where it would fall in the high density, and no neighborhood meeting, no city due process would solve anything. And we would just be stuck with high density apartments. And being that I think Linden has already done it and Provo has too, Orem's holding out, we're next unless we can hold it off. And so we can't just keep stalling. That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay, open up to questions for the applicant from the commission. Any questions?
I would like to make a comment. It's more of a comment to everyone. First of all, the gentleman who spoke about Lexington having not enough parking, we apologize for that, but the current city council fixed that. So difference, they've changed the ratios.
Not in arrears, but moving forward.
Moving forward, we can't fix what other city councils did, but this current city council has recognized that, and going forward, they fixed it. So the other thing, I think Mr. Lichty made a really important point. So we are all on the same team, him, you, us. We are residents too. We're not paid for this. We're here trying to make the best decision we can for Orem. But there is something that you don't know. And Mr. Lichty mentioned it. The state is getting very heavy-handed with available land. So they are offering incentives to put in high-density apartments, 50 units per acre. I strongly recommend that you all start working together to protect your land. The infighting is not helping you, because if you end up stagnating and doing nothing on this land and the state intervenes, I guarantee you it will be worse. We will do the best we can for you, but you have shown us definite problems that I'm not sure we have the answer. I think I personally would say, please start working together as residents so that your agency is not taken away from you.
Thank you. Any direct questions for Mr. Lichty?
I didn't see the traffic study in the packet when it came through, and I have some concerns about 1430 and the load that's already on it, and how that would affect everybody who lives in the area, as well as different routes that would may come through.
So not that I have the answer, but the traffic engineer told me they rate it intersections from A to F, A being the best, F the worst. And they have an evening, which is peak rate, and a daytime less peak. And right now, I think that intersection was like a C and a D or something like that. And with this development, it would go, I think one would stay at a C and one would go, anyways, it stay real similar, maybe go one level down. But with a traffic light, it would go to an A and a B, even with everything that was happening here.
What about traffic getting in and out of your development with 500 spots underground, those little two entrance and exits? Did the study address just the basic traffic requirements of people getting in and out of this particular development?
I think so. It was like, I think like it's 90 pages or something, but yeah, I'm not an expert on that, so I don't know.
Sam, do you want to address that at all?
Yeah, looking at the TIS that was submitted, there are some comments in there. There have been up on 1430 South, there is a right turn pocket that's been put into the concept plan to help with cars entering from the west and then continuing that 3-lane cross section as you come down the hill. So there would be a center turn lane to go ahead and turn left into the project. Looking at the executive summary, the background, currently right now, the way the TIS reads is that there isn't any mitigations right now currently for the background, meaning the existing conditions both now for 23 as well as 28. But with the project, yes, poor level of service is identified at 1430 South Sand Hill Road, and the signal will be needed at that intersection with the project. So that would be something that would come through site plan, is there would have to be a signal installed as part of this project.
Thank you.
Which should probably happen anyway if it's at a C and a D right now.
Jim, do you have a question?
Well, I have a question as it relates to the connecting streets. The opposition is expressed by Mr. McCartney. I'm curious, no one else has spoken to that, I don't believe. What sentiments do some of you have in that regard?
Are you trying to open up, because we're not opening back up for public comment right now.
Okay.
And what is your question exactly?
Well, my question is, we've had one person speak in opposition to
No.
connecting the streets.
We actually have a couple, but yes,
Pardon me?
several have.
No,
A lot of them, and most
okay.
of the emails
Uh-oh.
were objections.
You know,
I said most. So that's the
my
information we
question.
have right now. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's,
I
can we
did see-
finish
I did-
asking?
I just see some of the emails that
Yeah.
were in opposition, but I just heard one speak to that. That's
Yeah,
all.
okay. Yeah, and right now, if there are no further questions for him, we'll have him sit down and then we can start a discussion. Is there any other questions?
I was curious why you wanted to close off the parcel by the city property down.
well, we don't know, and it doesn't say anywhere. It's just a map, just pictures. We don't know how they're going to connect those. So we, a lot of these people here live on those homes just to the right of those two red dots. We've talked for years. They do not want traffic coming off of Sand Hill or I-15 or anywhere else going down their road. That is such a nice oasis neighborhood. So we just, originally I just had the two left ones being requested. And I thought my neighbors will kill me if we don't get rid of the other two. And, you know, I live right next to the bottom right one. And I don't know how long this map's existed, but it's possible in 20 years, if it's still like this, we get a whole new city council and staff, and someone will come in and build a tunnel or something. We just don't know. So we have the barrier to the north. We have a barrier to the left right now, but it's undeveloped. We need to put this to bed once and for all. And that was our chance. So when I discovered that map, I went out and said, hey, look, everybody, here's the thing you've been worrying about for 50 years or however long it's existed. We just got to get rid of those 4 red dots. And we had 12 neighbors go out and get signatures. We have like 400 signatures. There's still more out there we haven't collected. So, I mean, we get traffic coming through our neighborhoods. It's not family friendly.
Thank you. Any additional
I don't
questions?
have a question, but I do have a comment, if that's okay.
Let's get through the questions and then we'll do our comments and talk about motions and what we want to do from here. Okay.
question I have. Questions for the city, so maybe. after.
Okay, thank you very
Finished?
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any additional questions? That's a good question that he's in
Yeah,
for the city.
Did Jason or Sam see this? The possibility of Larry's land not being landlocked? Oh,
I haven't, no.
my chief concern is not having anybody landlocked. So I want to know from the city if this would solve the problem for them or not.
The problem with the connection out to Sand Hill Road is there's too much traffic, higher speeds, parking. It's on the wrong side of the curve, so you have some clear vision area issues with that. Could it be, if anything possible, it would be a restricted access, possibly a right in, right out without having to look at the numbers. That's why we don't want to have a street connection where they're showing on 3 and 4. The problem with not connecting Mr. Peterson's property up to the east and then into Fourth West is at the maximum length you have right now on a residential cul-de-sac is 650 feet. So they could put some sort of a cul-de-sac like he's shown on item number 5, understanding that going to the east, the furthest that he could go would be 650 feet. And that would be measured from that connection at 1600 South. So yeah, it would make more sense to have that loop road as he's showing going to the east, tie into 400 West, and that loops on itself, and then it kind of develops in there. That would provide some connectivity, some circulation, and then Mr. Peterson could develop it. So that's what I would recommend on those.
So if we were, this is just hypothetical question for you, if we were to eliminate the connection between 1430 and 400 West, maybe I need to ask it the other way. If we left it, that would allow for him to be able to have a right of way into the property.
So
I'm asking this badly, I'm sorry.
No, so if you remember when Bach Homes came through, they made that circuitous connection from Fourth West up to 1430, and then they also provided a stub, and that stub would have gone to the west, and then we would have been able to then connect that back to 16th South and provide him a way to develop. With the way it's drawn right now, I mean, it seems as if there's that there, but it doesn't sound like that's what Mr. Lechty is wanting to provide. It's a private road. It's 22 feet wide. It really wouldn't meet those needs. So, yeah.
Possible for the city staff
Hold
to
on.
hand the property owners the map you're looking at? They don't have a copy of that.
Yeah, I'm okay if they want to pass it around.
I
Up
don't
to
know
you
if he
guys.
has enough, but whatever.
Yeah, we can take ours and pass it around. We can share.
Chair.
Yes.
The difficulty with handing a document like this at the planning commission makes it impossible for staff really to evaluate.
Fair point.
The theoretical possibility of that parcel we've been discussing developing without access from Lichty's property is potentially there, but without more information and discussion, if there's to be a serious discussion about that issue, then frankly, I think you should continue the meeting.
Okay.
To allow staff to investigate it.
Absolutely.
It's putting us in a dangerous situation of making, well, it might, it could be, and people relying on that as a definite opinion.
I appreciate that. And it's also just trying to understand that if we were, because one of the items before us is the connection of those two roads. And if we eliminate the connection of those two roads, then we are landlocking him to a certain extent. And if those connections don't exist, is there still a way to create that? And that's part of the question I was trying to ask. I totally agree with you. Like, you can look at that piece of paper, but it doesn't mean much of anything, as we've clearly seen. So they're just further proposals onto what we're doing. So at this point, I understand you want to respond. I understand you want to make comments, but we need time for us to discuss. And I want to be clear about what's going on this evening too, is that our role in the planning commission is to make a recommendation to city council. So whatever we decide here, it will go on and be considered by city council. And there will be another meeting at the city council level. No final decisions being made tonight. Either way, on whatever we decide, that's the purview of the city council to make the final decision. So that being said, I think we need to talk. We appreciate, we've listened to y'all. We need time for us to kind of say, hey, where we're at on these and if we're ready to move forward or not. So regarding items, I need to break him apart, right? At this point, as we decide on if we want to talk more or just, yeah, let's do them as two different.
You can still discuss them together, but when it comes time to make a motion,
Yeah.
whoever makes a motion should probably make the motion on the street connection first and then have a discussion over that.
Sure.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
What I've heard here tonight has put us almost in an impossible situation. They don't like Mr. Lichty's proposal.
but they also don't want the streets connected. If we leave this as residential zoning, they're going to have their streets connected. How on earth are we supposed to make that decision for them when they can't even decide? What is better?
We do have the two separate motions, so we
No,
can.
I know.
Yeah.
But what do? If we say remove them all because that's what they want, and then we deny Mr. Lichty, we've got stagnation. There's no progress anywhere. And then we leave the zoning as residential. When someone comes in wanting to develop it as residential, they're going to say, we need to connect the streets. So it's this circuitous path that gets nowhere.
And this is why I think we do need to discuss it for a few minutes, because yes, I agree. If we leave it there on the thing, we're going to talk specifically about 1430 to 400 West. If we leave that on there, the next proposal that say this fails, the next proposal that comes before us, yes, we'll see that and say, oh, we have to make a connection between here. The option is we can also recommend that that connection be eliminated. So whatever, if this continues or another proposal comes before us, then it's not in the general plan and they are not required to make the connection. So they can be separated. If you think of them like that, it may be one solution to.
But if you're going to put residential homes in there instead of this, where do you make the access? You can't not have an access. And those are sort of logical.
And I think it's not that there wouldn't be access to 1430 or there wouldn't be access to 400 West. It's just that there is not a street that has to connect. And correct me, Sam, or whoever, that there doesn't have to be a road that connects 1430 to 400 West.
Right. If you were to eliminate the one red circle there at 1430, then there would not be a need to have 400 West some way, shape, or form connect to that direction.
So Sam, could you tell the entire room, if this remains residential, where would the streets need to be connected?
The only thing that I can say to that is that if this remains residential, everyone has to understand your maximum cul-de-sac length is 650 feet. If the way it sits right now, you have land that is currently there that is divided that cannot be developed. And if we take that connection off of 1430, that's fine. It's just that coming off of 400 West, the maximum length that they can go is 650 feet. The maximum length for this development, if they were to access 1430, is going to be 650 feet. So when you have a connection, you have options. When you don't have a connection, you have restrictions. So that's what if Mr. Peterson wants to go ahead and make the connection further to the west at 16th South, where he has property that fronts it, then it can go ahead and tie through and then it works out great. But that's also someone else's property. That's someone else's plan. The only thing that I can say is you got 650 feet to work with.
Okay, can I ask off of that one? Because that was kind of what I was trying to ask earlier and did very poorly. Is that sense of, if there's no connecting here, is there a way to get in? Because it sounds like if you were to develop, then you'd have to go and you could only have a 650-foot cul-de-sac off of 4th West or off of 1430, or it would depend on how the roads were developed.
If we're not wanting those two roads to connect, then yes, that's what our length would have to be. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
So-
So it would
so the
basically
current-
put two stubs
So-
of cul-de-sac at each end. That's
Yeah.
Right.
essentially
So
what
it's similar to what happened at Peyton Crossing. And the thing is Mr. Peterson could do it in phases. He could show a master plan of the whole thing, but he can only do one piece of it until he's got that connection, if that makes sense.
So
it
the
could be
current
back-
plan, the HS zone, that's not more than 650 feet, which basically says from 1430 to 1400 is not 600 feet. So there's not, right? Because his development center has that winds around and it almost goes all the way to the very end.
Well, he's showing a connection down to 400 West, even though it's gated, right?
Okay, so that mitigates. What's the distance between 1430 and 1400 or 16?
A lot. I don't know. I don't know how to say it.
More than 600.
650
Yeah, it's
feet
more
on
than
both
650
sides.
feet. Yeah. I mean, just for frame of reference, that stub road on the east road where the red circle is there, where it says city owned property, that's 650 feet.
Okay.
So that's why it stopped there, and that's why we haven't let anyone else develop.
Ryan?
A straight shot as a crow flies is 990 feet.
Okay.
From asphalt on 1430 to end of asphalt on Fourth West.
So you could have a cul-de-sac both ways.
You could, but then how would you connect into the other property that would
Well,
be
you
cut
could
off?
with the
So-
cul-de-sac.
So yeah, I mean, so that's kind of on that one. I'm gonna have to ask y'all to please be quiet. The acoustics in this room are strange. And I can hear you better than I can hear the people talking next to me because of the way it comes around. So I would appreciate letting us have our time to speak. Thanks.
Could I make one clarification?
No,
No, right now we're discussing.
Regarding what she said.
no.
No, continue, please. Does somebody else want to say something about? You look like you had something to say, sorry.
I have a question for Gary.
Yeah.
Sorry, I already asked Jason this, but I did ask at the beginning, would it revert back? If Mr. Lichty doesn't follow through, would it revert back to the residential? And the answer was no. So my second question is, could it be written into the development agreement that if he doesn't follow through, it would revert back? Is there a way around that?
Well, what development agreements typically do when you, in a rezone and you have a development agreement, typically you'll do several parts to the ordinance that changes the zoning. And often you'll put in that the developer has a certain period of time to get their application in and things like that. And that if they don't do it, say within a year, then the ordinance is void, which means that the effective date of the ordinance doesn't happen until they make their application. So they start moving forward. Then so they make an application and then it proceeds along and you have a development agreement. Typically what you would do is put some language into the development agreement that if they don't get a final plat and the project has final approval within a certain period of time, then the city may rezone the property and the developer covenants not to argue against it, or anybody they sell the property to would take it subject to that and would not argue or fight against the rezone. And so with those two protections in place, it really does protect a development agreement and in one, making the ordinance for the rezone not effective until they make their application. And usually gives them a year. And part of that is so that people don't, often people will come in and get entitlements done and then go out and search for a buyer and try to flip it. And that can create problems. This kind of holds them to a time frame of okay, if you're going to do this, you need to do it within a year and the project's moving. And then you have a certain period of time in the development agreement to get final approval. And if you don't do that, then you agree that the city can rezone the property and you will not argue against it. But just an automatic rezone without a public hearing, no, we cannot do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And that's not currently part of what's before us right now, is it?
No.
So it would either we need to table this if we wanted to add that or recommend that would be added.
Well, if you were interested in the Planning Commission makes a recommendation to the council for a rezone of the property, then a part of that motion should include a recommendation for the municipal council to enter into a development agreement and then specify in that development agreement things that would be important to the Planning Commission, whatever those items are. Limitation of units, or lot sizes or uses or time frame in which to do this, things like that.
Jason first.
So I'm in favor of tabling both items, just a little bit more till the city has a bit more work to do on making sure nobody else is landlocked with any other options. I think right now, even moving the motion to the council with this language could be not just confusing, but it will also create a lot more wasted time in public hearings. So the two items are important. I mean, from first glance, I just don't want anybody landlocked at all. We don't know if it could be or not. And thanks to Sam for pointing out really quick that this solution is hypothetical. We can't even consider it. It doesn't count for me. So this is a big deal for the neighborhood. It's a beautiful piece of land. There's a lot of people for it and against it. And I think knowing more would allow us to maybe come to terms or there's a middle ground between everybody, that everybody gets what they want, but in a way that does not affect the neighborhood's integrity. That's all I can't say for or against right now, but if that is possible, we'll get the city engineers to continue both items, then I would be highly in favor for that because it's just
Yeah, it is possible. And we can make that decision after we finish talking.
Yeah. Can I add one?
Jim was next in
yep.
line. Oh, Jerry? Okay, hold on 1/2 second. We haven't made a motion yet. We're
Okay,
talking about possibility for a motion.
Well,
Yeah,
I
we're-
totally.
Jim, hold on for a
concur.
second. Yeah, we're talking about the possibility of motioning to continue this. That's what Hasem just brought up. There's a couple of people who want to speak and then we'll get to a motion. We're not at a motion yet.
Well, essentially,
You want a
my
motion?
sentiments are the same as Hasten's.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Murray? Oh, hold on. Ryan's after Murray.
So I kind of agree. I have a concern about the petition to that was done. And I once had to do a petition where I had to get 10,000 signatures to get something on the ballot. And anyone who said yes and would sign their name was great. In my mind, there's 2 and potentially 3 different connections. And I would need to actually see the petition and see what people were signing and whether I don't think this is a valid petition to have 2 at the same time, because I don't know if they're in favor of one or the other, or maybe they were getting confused with 1600s. So I have some real concerns about the petition. So I want to see the petition to see how it was done and see the signatures and see how it was communicated with people. Because I think, again, I don't know, you could have got them all to approve the one on the east, for example, and none on the west or vice versa. And so that's why I would need to see the petition. So I think we need more information, at least on that one, for me to make a decision. Otherwise, I'd automatically say, no, I don't think it's valid. That would be my perspective.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. I'm trying to think of how best to put this and hopefully Mr. McGinn can help me. I understand that you'd like staff to work towards better street connections, but I'd like to clarify that we as staff can't necessarily dictate that the applicant do that. It's kind of his choice to do so. So I would rather you suggest maybe if Mr. Lichty is willing to work with the neighboring properties to develop those street connections and come back, that would probably be a little bit better direction. If he's not, then I'd probably suggest that you make a motion one way or the other that a decision is made or a recommendation is made. Otherwise, it just kind of puts it into limbo, if that makes sense. And maybe he's willing to proceed and kind of gamble that way, or kind of go back to the drawing board and come up with a better solution if it's looking like it's going one way or the other. Is that safe to say?
Ryan,
Larry?
is that very?
Yes, right. This is Mr. Lichty's application. And in the discussion that I've heard the Planning Commission have, I'm hearing some concerns. And one of those concerns is the ability that this project and recommending approval on both of his applications, what that might mean to adjoining property owners and how they can connect and develop in the future, and may make some properties not able to develop as they otherwise would. And so that being your concern at this point, really you can, I agree with Mr. Clark, you can either make a recommendation of approval or denial of the applications to the council, Or you could ask the applicant if he would like a continuance in a time to work with neighbors to come in and show that if all 4 of the connections showing on the connection master plan application were removed, how people could develop. And if he's willing to do that, then you could continue it. If he's not willing to do that, then you probably should just go forward with a recommendation. But yet he has heard your concerns.
Thank you. Helena, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think for me, currently sitting here, because this is my area also, so I consider myself one of you. I would end up voting yes for Mr. Lichty, because I think that is the better solution than ending up connecting all of these streets where you have got sandhill traffic going all the way through family neighborhoods. But I think their solution is better, is that Mr. Lichty and all of you work together, because our goal is to avoid high density in that area. And there has to be a compromise. You either put family homes in there and connect the streets, or you accept Mr. Lichty's plan.
Okay. Hasten.
Yeah, just to speak to this again, I mean, like, it is a considerable sum of money that this property was purchased for. And nobody just goes and buys a piece of land that knows residential with taking that risk. I'm a business owner. I buy properties all the time. I don't just go buy a residential property in the hope to change the minds of the council later. It's a risk that you took when you bought the property. You knew it's residential. So I'm in favor of having the chair ask for the for continuance and work between the neighbors. But otherwise, as it sits, you knew what you're getting into when you bought it.
Okay, everyone okay if I ask the question? I will ask you the question. Are you willing to consider a continuance of this item to give you more time to work with the neighbors and possibly propose something else?
I'm friendly. I don't have.
Hold on, is his mic on? Sorry to interrupt.
Is it working now?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
So I'm friendly. I don't have a problem with talking with them, but what I was trying to say the last 15 minutes is if you put a 65-foot wide city street with curb and gutter and sidewalks, say that bottom left circle, there's enough of a slope immediately to the west that you're going to have to curve to the north some. And it, in essence, it kind of almost ruins the seclusiveness and the haven of the forest. So, I mean, my main goal is to preserve the neighborhoods, to keep traffic from coming through. But what do I do? You know, if I compromise something like that and we ruin the bottom third or bottom half of the forest, and these guests are coming in and expecting to be in the forest and cabins at Sundance, I've stuck my neck out, like you were saying. I was going all or nothing. So I don't have a problem talking with them, but I really don't see a way my development will work with a city street even coming in and tucking to the left. But
you kind of knew that, though.
I knew that, yes.
Okay.
And I'm not purposely trying to landlock anybody. And, you know, I don't know all the history of what's gone on with Larry and the family. And I'm not an engineer, an expert, but so it's, I mean, so let's say we put a city street through this property I'm buying. What are they going to give me in exchange for that? I mean, am I just supposed to donate it?
They don't need to give you anything in exchange for that. You bought the property knowing there's a street master plan.
Yeah.
So there's no need to compare it to other things. You knew what you're getting into when you bought it. You're trying to change 2 items. We're trying to work with you on the neighbors. So it's simply, we're asking, are you willing to work with the neighbor to find a solution for people not to be landlocked, or no? Say yes or no, no explanation, so we can move forward.
Well, definitely yes. I don't want them to be
So
landlocked.
it's a yes from his side. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I mean, trying to think of solutions here. One possibility is that he could, if he was willing to sell some land to Mr. Peterson to allow Fourth West to go north and then turn left, and then that would allow you a loop road that comes through and comes out of Mr. Peterson's property, right?
And that's the
And
time
then-
we need to talk. we
And then
need-
the
we need all
rest
three to
of
talk.
his
Yeah.
development could still possibly work, right?
And that's discussions that can be had if we continue this and just
Yeah.
give it
So
some more
that,
space.
that's one option that may not totally destroy Mr. Lichty's vision of his site. But also he'd be compensated. We're not asking that he give up property for that connection by any means without compensation.
I mean, let's say this solution was not presented. Those two applications were not put together. That land is destined for an R12. That's a current zone for it, is R12. So buying it knowing it's destined for R12 was also an option. It's not like was not on the table. That's actually this most solid option before presenting anything. To me, it seems premeditated. Like if you're gonna buy a piece of land that big for that much money, you knew you're either gonna be R12 or you're gonna have to change a few things. So I think if everybody's willing to work together, if the city is willing to present some solution, and then if it comes back with solution, great. If it comes back, everybody else is kind of gridlocked, then we'll just make the motions necessary.
Make our recommendation. Yes.
So I was going to confirm that indeed it is R12 currently, but the road structure is such that it really can't be developed unless this master plan is followed. So it's so you can't have it both ways. If you don't want the proposal that Mr. Licky has, then how are you going to do the R12 if you can't have the street connections? So something's got to give.
And that's still an option. Street connection is an option, and R12 is still an
Yeah.
option.
Or rezone to R8, or,
Yeah.
split the parcel into north and south. There are other
Yeah.
options,
There are.
right?
A lot of
We can
options.
split off the part that's apartments from the part that's residential. I mean, there are, so this is one option, but I think there are other options that I think
Or you-
could work for this, right?
Or you evaluate something like was on that paper we handed out, if that's a possibility also.
Sure, we just can't do it now.
Just can't do it right now in this meeting at this moment because there's other factors.
But
So
you'd probably need an engineer to make sure you got your distances and everything as well.
absolutely.
So,
It's just an idea.
no, it's a good idea. I just, we have certain lengths, 650 feet for a cul-de-sac, which may not go the full length of the property, which would still landlock a big chunk of it. So
So
you need that
sorry, Mike.
to be considered.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Gary, so what is the difference just for our purposes between continuance and tabling? Are they the same?
Well, you can, tabling is when you table something to a event specific. For instance, we're going to table this until staff, you bring back that report that or until you get your traffic study done. And then once the traffic study's done, put it back on the agenda and bring it to us. A continuance really is more in the sense of we're continuing it to a date certain. And so you and they're both a continuance, you could motion to continue and then say, well, we move to continue until the applicant requests to come back on, and the applicant's heard our expectations. And so if the applicant comes back in 6 months, that's great. If the applicant comes back in 2 weeks, that's great, depending on what the applicant feels he has done to address your questions. Or if you wanted to, you could continue it to a date specific, to the first meeting in January or something like that. And then at that time, we would, in January, come back at the first meeting, have it noticed. On an event specific, when the applicant was ready, he'd notify us, we would put it back on the agenda.
Oh, like the event specific, because that puts the timetable on them
Yeah,
when
agreed.
they're ready, when they've had their discussions, and they can come back.
So what I'm hearing is that maybe what we need to do is make a motion regarding this as to table it until the applicant has had time to review these things and talk with the neighborhood and request for it to be back onto her. Does that,
Did you just make a motion?
I didn't.
Oh,
I was discussing it in general, so we know what to say.
You stated it so well. It sounded like a motion.
And at the same time, they review the other options.
Other things can go in between. You'll have to talk to staff about exactly when and how that would, but that puts it back in your court and it puts it back in the neighborhood's court to have discussions further before we make any motion on these items or recommendations to city council.
If I could something, if you
Yeah,
could reference
please.
both items, so if you
Yes.
continue.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'll try
You
a
can try and do
motion.
it.
Yeah, I move that I need to see them. I move that we continue the recommendation to amend the Lakeview area street connection master plan to eliminate the street connections between 1430 South, 400 West and 360 West, 1400 South, and to continue the recommendation to city council to amend section 2253A in the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning the property located generally at 1430 South, 400 West from the R12 and R8 zones to the highway services zone until the applicant has met with the residents and city to address concerns that have been outlined
I
tonight. Is that
second,
okay? Outlined tonight.
I second that motion.
Okay.
Mike?
Aye.
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 The motion has been, it's been approved. To continue has been approved.
Is now continue until the applicant comes back and requests it to be back on the agenda. And it's at the applicant's discretion when he believes it's ready to come back to the flag.
Okay. Did people hear that or do I need to repeat it? Okay, so yes, so that'll be continued until the applicant is ready to bring it back before the planning commission. Thank you. Okay. We'll talk afterwards. We need to finish with our meeting. Okay, item 4.1, meeting minutes for October 4th, 2023. Oh, Ryan, I didn't ask if you had anything.
I think we've been here long enough, so I don't have anything.
That's all right. Now can we do a motion for?
I make a motion on the meeting minutes of said date be
October
approved.
4th.
A second.
Helena?
Aye.
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 Minutes approved. Motion to adjourn? Or right, do you have anything to say before we adjourn? Okay.
So moved to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Jerry? Motion to adjourn?
Aye.
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 That did it.
Aye. Meeting
Out of
adjourned.
order.